Thank you. The chair has been promoted.
Hi, sorry about that. Okay. How's everybody doing?
Great, thank you.
Good, thank you.
And Madam Clerk, does it appear we have enough for a quorum to get started? At first glance?
Okay.
I think so.
Yes, it looks like we do.
Okay, so unless there's anything that anybody needs to ask, I'm going to ask that we let our attendees in, and then we'll do roll call and get the meeting going.
We are broadcasting, Chair.
Oh, we already are.
Yes.
My apologies. Okay. Sorry for being a few minutes late. I apologize for that. And we'll take our first agenda item, which is generally, roll call, and then we'll do public comment.
Albany.
Here.
Berkeley.
Present.
Dublin.
Here.
Fremont. Livermore.
Here.
Newark. Newark is here. Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Here.
Leandro.
Present.
Tracy. Union City.
Here.
Thank you. Alameda County. Emeryville.
Here.
Oakland.
Present.
Advisory Committee.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
And Hayward is here as well. Al Mendel won last time.
Oh, I apologize for that. How can I forget myself? Apologize.
And Supervisor Haggerty should be coming on soon.
Thank you for the update.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. And now we'll go to our regular public comment, meant to be items that the public can comment on that relate to EBCE matters and issues, but are not on the agenda for tonight. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody who is signing up or has signed up for public comment?
Yes, I have Barbara Stebbins, Jessica Tovar, and Alita Dupree. And we'll start with Barbara Stebbins.
Could I request that Alita Dupree go first, because we're kind of waiting for Scott Haggerty?
Okay, sure. I thought we were going to speak to the item in previous emails, but okay, we'll have you go after Alita.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Board Chair, Dan Calvin, members, Alita Dupree for the record. Need a clock here. I come to you simply as an ordinary user of electricity. I try to buy as much renewable electricity as possible. And I am aspirational, but not ideological, and always try to be practical. And my thoughts and comments are founded in deliberation and reason. As we prepare for a new year, certainly the pillars of what I want to see in East Bay Community Energy are various, such as more renewables and storage, local development, both in production and infrastructure and end use, and always having a value-priced option. Because clean energy and renewable energy should never be a luxury. We don't ever want to price our products that they're so expensive that people will leave. because I don't want people to leave. And also, if electricity is expensive, then people are going to use fossil fuels for their heavy loads, such as cooking and heating, hot water, and transportation. And so part of driving toward electrification is to ensure that electricity is clean as possible. It's also affordable. Because I am sitting here in my all-electric home, and I've been averaging 30 to 40 kilowatt hours per day. And I would be using more if I had my own laundry machine and if I had an electric vehicle. I don't have a washer dryer, and I don't have a car. So I'm excited for the future of EBCE, and the opinions and comments I make are my own, though there are surely many who will agree with my sentiments. What I want at the end of the day always is a cleaner, greener, more affordable, and better EBCE. And I believe that your board is the team to continue that work and make it happen. And I thank you.
Thank you. And who's our next speaker?
Jessica Thabard and Barbara Stebbins unmuted. You're both unmuted. You can go in whichever order you'd like.
Okay, this is Barbara Stebbins, so I'm going to start. I hope Supervisor Haggerty has arrived. We had something we wanted to read today, and actually we're hoping that Melissa from Sierra Club will show up, because there are 3 of us that we wanted to read something honoring Supervisor Haggerty. So I'm going to start, and then Melissa hopefully will be joining. Otherwise, Jessica, I'm sure, will take over. Oh, Melissa is unmuted. Well, so first me, Melissa, then Jessica. The East Bay Clean Power Alliance would like to honor Supervisor Scott Haggerty for championing the efforts to establish a community choice energy program starting in 2014, and for leading the board in launching the program in 2018. The road to establishing EBCE was not easy, having to manage many stakeholders in the process. Scott Haggerty chaired the steering committee set up to design the program in 2015. It was made up of more than 40 stakeholders, including city and county staff members, elected officials, technical, labor, and most importantly, community leaders from various Alameda County cities. It was at this steering committee body that the goals of the new agency were formulated: creating clean energy jobs and local wealth, providing local health and safety, including community in the decision-making process, providing more renewable energy than PG&E, in addition to providing stable rates and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. And meanwhile, Melissa will take over.
Thanks, Barbara. To continue Barbara's comment on behalf of the Sierra Club, we want to say, to continue the statement from Barbara, in August of 2016, the East Bay Clean Power Alliance and the Alameda Labor Council established a unity position calling for a community choice program committed to developing clean energy jobs. And in October of 2016, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors under Scott Haggerty's leadership voted unanimously to start a CCA program and to make a commitment to doing more than just offering affordable rates and reducing greenhouse gases, but to also invest in transforming the East Bay into the clean energy future we need to thrive. This also included investing $500,000 towards a local development business plan, which was completed and adopted in 2018. Since then, Many organizations, agencies, educators, electeds, journalists, and many, many others have heard of the East Bay Community Energy and for its innovative design from the onset. The East Bay Clean Power Alliance wants everyone to know that it is because of Scott Haggerty's willingness to invest his energy and time and his commitment that we have an East Bay Community Energy Program, providing electricity to almost 2 million people and laying the groundwork to transform energy into a solution in our community. I'll pass it over to you, Jessica.
Thank you. Scott Haggerty, this is something that you should be very proud of as you move forward to the next chapter of your efforts. Gene Roddenberry's premise for Star Trek was to explore the universe for new ideas or to explore strange new worlds to seek out new life and new civilizations. To quote, boldly go where no man has gone before. East Bay Community Energy is known for its innovative local Green New Deal commitment and its commitment to bring clean power to the people. So tonight, East Bay Clean Power Alliance honors and thanks Scott Haggerty for his service and bold leadership. Clean power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no other speakers for public comment.
We do have other speakers?
Yes, I have Blair Beekman.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks for seeing my hand. Thank you for that. A few words here. I'm learning the simple concept and the importance of how Bay Area local governments at this time in our lives always needs to consider and prepare for natural disasters and catastrophes in their planning of community projects. I hope this difficult subject matter can become easier to talk about and then more open to work with for all people in the SF Bay Area in the next 5 to 10 years. Those are simple words that I want to learn to kind of practice and say often in public comment for the next few months. I'm initially from San Jose. I've been working on accountability with technology issues for like a number of years now. And it's really good practices, you know, how community and government can connect with each other and develop better democratic practices. And those ideas create the ideas of peace, and they question how to end the use of continual war and shock doctrine. So it's really sustainable, positive, good practices. And that naturally led me to community energy ideas that are happening, and that the East Bay has been great in developing for like years now. And with that said, you know, I've been coming to meetings here for the EBCE since about April, and I've always been trying to, you know, figure out things. Like coming from San Jose, I'd follow their community energy program, and I think I've said here a number of times that 2023 was an important marker and milestone for them. I've never quite known exactly what that has meant, and I've tried to bring that up here. And I've always, if you've noticed, I've tried to bring up that in the next 3 years, how exactly are we going to talk about the ideas of nuclear, you know, for the future of community energy? And I'm learning a lot. It's a lot to learn about things, and to learn that, you know, how much we are dominated by nuclear energy, and its finances are a considerable portion of how we function. How are we going to work on that in the next 3 years? And that's an important concept to myself. You know, there is just the great ideas of what local community energy can do between each local cities and local practices. I hope we can develop that. I've heard recent ideas of a just transition that sound really impressive for the next 3 years. And all of this is basically, you know, how do we address really good practices, even though, you know, something harmful may be coming in our future, and really work on that and on that good energy and sustainable energy, that once a disastrous situation happens, we can still maintain our sustainable good ideas and practices. I'll talk more on this item a bit later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There are no other speakers for public comment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate it very much. And we're going to go to our, we're going to go to the consent agenda.
Hold on, Mr. Chair. I have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't miss that. Supervisor Haggerty, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the Clean Power Alliance know that, I came late onto the call. I apologize that it was a scheduling error. And I heard most of what you said, but I will go back and listen to the recording. But we didn't do this alone. I remember very early on meeting with Jessica and trying to get this thing going. And I just want to say, it's been a great, it's been a great thing for those of you who were on early on when we were meeting and having those stakeholder meetings of 38, 36 people, all trying to come to consensus at the Castro Valley Library on how we were going to move forward with this. And I'm pretty sure that without Clean Power Alliance, this wouldn't have gotten done. So I appreciate the kind words. I will miss this agency. This agency has meant a lot to me, but I think with our CEO, you're in great hands, and you'll continue to supply clean power to the people that we represent, and giving them the opportunity to choose to use solar and wind and other forms of energy to power their homes and businesses. So thank you, Jessica, and everybody else who spoke. I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. Well-deserved recognition, and we're gonna, as a board, we're gonna, on our agenda, we're gonna be acknowledging both you and other departing board members as a group, and so we'll get to that shortly. Thank you again, Scott, for all your leadership. And now we are at the consent agenda. If anybody has any a desire to pull any items of the consent agenda or ask any questions of staff of any of the consent items, now is the time to do so. If not, we will happily entertain a motion.
I move approval.
That's Mayor Arguin from Berkeley.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Was that Lily May, Mayor Fremont seconding?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda as presented. Are there any speakers on this, Madam Clerk?
There are no speakers for the consent agenda.
Excellent. Okay, then we could take the roll. Thank you.
Okay. And the roll call vote will include the makers of the motion. Albany?
Yes.
Berkeley?
Yes.
Dublin?
I'm trying to, yes, that's, I approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Fremont?
Yes.
Hayward?
Yes.
Livermore?
Yes.
Newark?
Yes.
Pleasanton?
Yes. Yes.
Leandro?
Yes.
Thank you. Tracy? Not joined. Union City?
Yes.
Alameda County?
Yes.
Emeryville?
Yes.
Oakland?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes with attendance.
Okay, thank you very much. And next we have the CEO report and various items on there. Nick?
All right, thank you, Dan. One second. Wanted to share a couple things. First, we did have a special executive committee meeting on Friday, December 4th at noon. that was predominantly focused on one of our agenda items for tonight, which was the allocation, the PG&E allocation, specifically at this meeting, the whether or not to bring forward a matter to the board to consider allowing EBC to sell its allocation of nuclear from PG&E. The executive committee unanimously recommended that we bring the item forward to the full board for consideration. So that was our executive committee. We do have another one coming, regularly back onto our regular schedule in January. We did cancel our Finance, Administration, and Procurement Subcommittee meeting in December, and we did not meet. The Marketing, Regulatory, and Legislative Subcommittee did not meet in December. I do believe that our chair, Dan Kalb, though, is working on a set of recommendations that he will be sharing with you, his fellow board members, for staffing those committees, as we do have quite a bit of board turnover that is going on here. We do have 2 new staff members who have joined EBC since our last meeting. Mary Len Taylor, who's our senior HR business partner. Mary Len has spent over 20 years working in human resources and has spent a lot of time actually working in renewables and environmental industry for companies like Nextracker and Renew Financial. And we also have Noah Cordoba, who's our Energy Efficiency and Electrification Fellow. Noah is helping design and implement our energy efficiency and building electrification programs. Noah is coming to us through the Climate Corps program. And before that, he had interned for the Conservation Foundation and is a recent graduate of North Central College in Illinois. On to an item that I wanted to bring to the board's attention today, not as really even as an information item, but just more of a heads up. And this is something that I'll be bringing back in January. But, for some time now, there's been an effort amongst a number of CCAs to form a multi-CCA joint powers authority to help facilitate procuring energy projects that might be too big for any one individual CCA to procure on its own. So consider a very large offshore wind facility where, to make it economically feasible, you need to buy at least 500 or 750 megawatts. Certainly too much for a large CCA like EBCE. But if you were to bring 5, 6, 7 CCAs together, this could make sense. The structure that is being considered with this JPA is one really focused on a very lean overall governing JPA, and most of the costs and most of the parameters of the JPA would be developed in the context of specific project agreements. So while each of the participating CCAs would be on the board of the Joint Powers Authority, the costs and the work and the parameters of the Joint Powers Authority are very much limited, because the goal is for the individual members of the JPA, all of them or are part of them, to identify and enter into project agreements. And with many of the cost allocation, governance matters being dealt with in the specific project arrangements. The benefit of that is EBC, for instance, could be part of this large JPA and have no liability beyond $10,000 to $15,000 a year in annual expenses for basic maintenance and reporting. And then on a project by project basis, EBCE would be able to consider much more in-depth project agreements, contracts, cost allocation frameworks, and bring any of those those more complex, potentially risky or costly arrangements, not necessarily risky, but costly is a better word to describe it, back to this board for consideration and approval. So my intention is to bring a more detailed presentation on this JPA to the board in January for consideration and action at that point. Next, on the marketing and account services front, I think the most, we're not going to spend a lot of time here because I do want to spend some time on the power charge and difference adjustment. But we did mail out our power content label. We sent nearly 135,000 postcards and over 315,000 emails. Quite an email undertaking actually this time. This is the first time we've moved from paper to paperless, which we'll actually cover a little bit later, how that has created some cost savings that we're recommending be allocated to some community grants. So the next thing we're going to cover here, and Todd Edminster, if you are on, Stephanie, could you promote Todd? Todd, there we are.
Hey, everyone.
Todd is going to share a presentation on the power charge and difference adjustment, which many, almost all of you are very familiar with, but to our new board members, this is an acronym that you will become very familiar with in your time with EBCE. I can promise you that.
I'll do a quick level set before we dive into the weedy stuff. Stephanie, do we have the PowerPoint deck queued up?
It should be up now.
Excellent. So we do. Okay. And do I just call it next slide to move it forward, or am I driving?
This next slide, please.
Okay. Next slide then, please. So the PCIA is an acronym for power charge and difference adjustment. It's the mechanism by which PG&E recovers the uneconomic portion of its generation portfolio. So in our enabling legislation, the legislation that established CCAs, there's provisions for avoiding cost shifts to remaining bundled customers when customers leave utility service to join a CCA. And the PCIA is the mechanism by which that cost shift is avoided. It's overseen by the California Public Utilities Commission. And the way that they've structured it is in broad brush strokes laid out here. You figure out what is the cost of the portfolio, and that's all of the capital costs that goes into existing generation resources owned by the utility. It's all of the costs that are paid out for power purchase agreements. And you add all of that up, that's your cost. You figure out, all right, what's the value of the output from the plant? That's the market value. You subtract that from the cost, and you end up with a lump sum of the indifference amount, which is essentially the above market costs for which the utility has to be made whole to avoid the stranded costs. I should clarify, these are for legacy generation assets. The other piece of this is that once a customer departs, they're not on the hook for purchases going forward. So they're only responsible for the legacy costs for procurement that was undertaken before those customers left. So you end up with a dollar amount, around $2 billion this past year, as it turns out. That's the indifference amount. You then turn that into a rate. So we talk about PCIA, we talk about PCIA rate. PCIA generically is the total amount owed. The rate is the cents per kilowatt that every customer has to pay for energy, whether they get it from a CCA or an IOU. Next slide, please. All right. So why do we care? Well, the PCIA is effectively an adder on top of EBC's generation rate. And in as much as our generation rate is keyed to PG&E's and our value propositions that will come in a little bit below PG&E's rate, we have to bear in mind the PCIA rate when we figure out what our rate will be. And so as you see here, the punchline is the bullet, all else being equal. If PCIA goes up, in order to maintain a given value proposition, we have to get our gen rate down. So PCIA is actually very important, and when it goes up, it impacts our ability to set our own rates and recover our costs. Next slide. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the PCIA is a creation of the California Public Utilities Commission implementing our enabling legislation. And we're actually right in the middle of what I call PCIA season. There are essentially 3 annual proceedings and then one sort of overarching PUC proceeding that are related to what the PCA will ultimately be. The overarching proceeding is the PCA rulemaking that's been going on for years. That's where policy is set that governs all 4 investor-owned utilities and PCA broadly. And then there are 3 utility-specific proceedings relating to PG&E, and they're actually equivalent proceedings for all of the other investor-owned utilities that will actually set rates. And those are annual proceedings, and 2 of the 3 are actually set to be resolved tomorrow. Those 3 proceedings are first the 2019 Era Compliance Docket. That's essentially a backwards look at how the utility managed its portfolio. And then the Era Forecast Proceeding, 2021 Era Forecast Proceeding. That's a forward-looking proceeding that establishes the PCI rate for next year, as well as bundled customer generation rates that we'll be benchmarking against. And then there's a 3rd proceeding, which is unique to this year, and that's the PUBA trigger account. So, and I apologize for the alphabet soup here, and feel free to pause me if it would be helpful for me to go back over what some of these are. But the PUBA trigger is an artifact of this odd provision that limits the rate at which the PCA can grow for unbundled customers, like EBC customers, but not for bundled customers. The mechanic of that functions kind of like a negative amortization mortgage, where the cap limits the amount that we unbundled customers have to pay, but it defers but doesn't avoid the ultimate payment of that amount. So we're paying less than, put this in air quotes, we're supposed to. The amount that we're not paying is loaned to us by the bundled customers and tracked in a separate account. Once that separate account balance gets up too high, we have to start paying it back. The filing that triggers, hence trigger, the obligation to start paying it back is this PCA trigger application that I've indicated here. So those are the sort of the 4 big PUC proceedings that are all tangled up together in setting the PCI for next year. And next slide, please. Talk a little bit more about each one of these. So in the rulemaking, as I said earlier, that's policy across all the utilities. The big things that are still in play there are allocation of the portfolio. So right now, bundled customers have first choice of what's in the portfolio. And then for us to get access to portfolio resources, we have to go through various market processes, bid on the resources. The idea being pursued by Working Group 3 in this docket was to allocate out the resources. So right now there's a proposal before the commission and they're cogitating on it. The other active item is changes to customer bills. We're driving towards is a more uniform approach to bills so that whether you're bundled or unbundled, your bill looks essentially the same, and it allows for easier changeover to CCA service and also for greater comparability, CCA versus bundle. Next slide, please. Okay, 2019 Era Compliance Docket. So again, this is the backwards look. If we didn't like the way PG&E was running elements of their portfolio, this is a place where we can take up some of those issues. Many of them are dealt with in the general rate case, but some of them are dealt with here. So we've been litigating with PG&E over some of the deep in the weeds administration issues for about 6 months now. We reached a partial settlement, as you see here, on a bunch of the accounting issues, as well as compliance with their plans. Still having some fights over, again, some accounting arcana. And right now the matter is submitted to the commission, and again, they're thinking about what they want to do on it. We expect to see a proposed decision early next year on that. Next slide, please. Okay, the 2 proceedings that we expect to be resolved by the commission tomorrow are the Era Forecast and the PUBA trigger. And they're consolidated by the commission, which means they're being dealt with simultaneously. We've been litigating these for about 6 months. The Era Forecast is filed every June, and then there's a big, it's called the November update, a revamp of the numbers as we get close to year end. We've reached a settlement on a bunch of accounting arcana, as well as some process going forward, which we think are good outcomes here. There are some other accounting arcana that's still in dispute, but will be resolved tomorrow. Or in the case of the DAC GT budgeting, once the advice letter that we filed with the commission on another track is ultimately approved. Next slide, please. The PUBA trigger is also addressed through the settlement, and going back a minute to this cap mechanism, the problem with a cap, while it may sound great superficially, oh, hey, we're paying less, is that it leads to this big buildup of undercollected amounts that are going to land with a thud, as it turns out, a year later, and also have a bunch of process associated with them that's expensive and time consuming. And because of the timing around the loan that the cap engenders, once you start repaying, it builds in a structural advantage to bundled versus unbundled rates. And so what we've been working through in the settlement here is to how to sort of unwind those adverse consequences of the cap. And so what we've proposed to the commission is that we go to uncapped rates starting next year, so we won't continue to build up this $100 million of under collections that we then have to pay back, but that we can pay back the existing under collection over multiple years versus, well, what the decision called for filing was 2 months. What PG&E had proposed was 1 year. So the settlement would allow for a 3-year pay down of what's currently about a $300 million balance versus taking all of that hit in 1 year. The alternative to settlement would be what PG&E had proposed, which is a 1-year pay down and keeping the cap in place, but then we'd have the same problem in 2021 where we'd have another several $100 million to be paid down coming out of the cap from this year. So those are the two choices in play. Next slide, please. Where we think this is going to land and how we think this is going to land. Well, we had a proposed decision that was going with the PG&E initial proposal, even though they had settled with us. We'd got a revised decision this morning that would adopt the key elements of the settlement, which would be a 3-year pay down versus the 1-year pay down, as well as a shift to the uncapped rates. So we wouldn't be building that balance up anymore next year. And that's going to get voted out tomorrow. Fingers crossed it'll go forward. It's a much more manageable approach to all of this going forward. So this is all process. I haven't really talked substance, in part because we don't, as of this morning, we have, I think, a much better idea of where things are going to land in terms of the actual numbers, but we won't have a full picture until PG&E files its implementing advice letter coming out of tomorrow's vote, which will be at the end of the month. So this is really kind of to whet your appetite for numbers that we'll be presenting next month's meeting, which will lay out the numbers and the impacts on the budgeting going forward. I'll stop there, Nick, unless you want to give any kind of a preview. Again, there's been so much in play. Finally, our decisions are coalescing around a set of numbers that we think are pretty solid, but it's been very much in flux up until now, so we don't want to mislead with preliminary numbers.
No, Todd, thank you very much.
If anyone's
as I think it illustrates, that we're constantly in sort of this mode of trying to sort of better understand what the implications of the PCIA and commission and utility action are, and unfortunately we continue to face challenges with getting clear views of what's going to happen. So when we get the rates is when, my view is we won't really know what the rates really are until we get the rates, unfortunately. What I will say is this amortization, and we're going to provide more detail next month when we actually have the rates. But I think this amortization approach does represent I think all things considered, a win for the CCAs. And I think you'll see next month when we bring some of the values forward, what it's going to show is a less drastic kind of reduction in our headroom, and headroom in some ways is much more important than the PCIA itself. Headroom is the difference. Headroom really is the difference between the PCIA and PG&E's current rates, because that is what we have to beat to ensure that we're offering our customers a discount. And under the PCIA, as we'll show next month, I think we're seeing some slightly better headroom values than when we had, initially forecast, largely due to this PUBA amortization that we've been able to negotiate. So, I'll take the small victories where I can, recognizing that there's still, there are still big PCIA challenges in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, to echo that, the absolute magnitude of the PCIA is not the key thing, right? Like I could tell you, well, the PCIA is probably going to be about 4 cents next year. But to understand whether that's meaningful or not, you have to look at it in the context of what's happening with PG&E's generation rate as well. And if the same things that are bumping up the PCIA, for example, a change in PG&E's GRC numbers, general rate case numbers, are also bumping up the gen rate by an equal amount or more cents per kWh, actually the higher PCIA may not be so bad. And that's part of what we'll get into next month.
Board members, are there any questions on the PCIA before we move on to Todd or to Nick? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay, thank Nick and Todd and your team. Thank you for dogging that. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a multi-pronged effort, and it's obviously a fundamental question in terms of the impact to EBCE and our ratepayers. So thank you for being on top of that. Nick, is there more on your report?
Yes, and then I am also very pleased to share, and this is something, board, where we're going to need a lot of your help, but I'm very pleased to share that we have opened up the Community Advisory Committee application period. And so we're going to have it open for the next 2 months. And I think there's one more page here. I believe there is. Yep. So Stephanie, can you, well, no, anyway. This gives you a sense of, we're looking to fill 5 vacancies on the CAC. These vacancies are predominantly from, well, we have one vacancy from the city of Tracy. So board member Ariola, we're gonna really need to partner with you there. I believe we have 2 openings from the Tri-Valley. And so we're going to need to partner with our Tri-Valley board members there. And I believe we have 2 from the Tri-City area. So Fremont, Newark, and Union City. And we also have quite a few alternate spots, and I believe we're going to have 2 at-large spots as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to join the CAC, and I think as our board members who are certainly closest to your communities, helping us identify candidates who might be interested in serving in this really critical function is going to be really important. So you, I believe, have received an email from Stephanie. If you haven't, you will. With more details about the application period. And you'll be hearing from me and my colleague Alex as well individually with some follow-up around outreach for applicants.
Thank you, Nick. I'll want to underscore that everybody, obviously all board members are elected officials, and most, if not all of us, have constituent newsletters. This is something you could put in your constituent newsletter in addition to any targeted outreach you may do to organizations or groups of people in your communities who might have an interest in or expertise in what EBCE related matters. So yes, it's going to take proactive outreach to fill these slots. So consider it that everybody has homework over the next month or so to do that outreach, and hopefully we'll get a number of applications in. And Nick, what's the process after the application deadline? What you remind us what the process will be after that?
So I believe this year what we're going to do is for those open spots for the board members representing their communities, they will give the first pass at reviewing the applications. And then they will recommend candidates to the full board for their appointment.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Is that your report?
That is my report.
Okay.
Nick?
Okay. Someone had a question?
Yeah, Nick, could you just run through the communities again that you need the appointments from?
And Stephanie, please, I don't have, correct me if I'm missing anything, but I believe we have one opening for the city of Tracy. We have 2 openings for residents in Livermore, Dublin, Pleasanton. And I'm not sure if Castro Valley.
I have that. Castro Valley is counted under Central County,
Okay, so
which has 2 seats available.
Okay, so we have 2 seats available for East County, so the Tri-Valley cities. We have 2 openings for the Tri-City communities, so Newark, Union City, and Fremont. And then we have 2 at-large positions that can be appointed, but residents of any community in our service territory can take on. And then we have alternates, 10 alternates as well, though I believe we're first and foremost going to try to ensure that we have all of the board members, the CAC members rather, appointed, and then likely start by taking the applications for those CAC spots and appointing candidates who may not have just made the cut but are still interested to those alternate spots.
And
Thanks.
Nick, will we be asking the appointed CAC members, once they're appointed, or if they're already appointed, to also recommend alternates to us?
No. I think we really want to rely. The board is going to review the candidates and would then, in turn, recommend the alternates as well. Certainly, all because each CAC spot has an alternate. The current members or the future members are encouraged to find folks from within their networks to apply for those alternate spots as well.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay, great.
Can I think I want to just confirm what I heard, which was that the alternates don't necessarily have to come from the same places as the community, but they're encouraged to do so? Or is it both?
No, they have to come from the same community. The purpose of the alternate is that if, say, the Tri-Valley representatives can't be at a meeting, the alternate is also from the Tri-Valley, so you have that community.
That makes perfect sense. I just wasn't sure that's what I'd heard.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Trish. Any other questions? Madam Clerk, do we have any public commenters for the CEO report?
Yes, we have 3 speakers, Blair Beekman, Alita Dupree, and Eric Brooks. Blair Beekman will be unmuted first.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the PCIA report. I think that may offer something comprehensive for myself in my first days of years of learning these things that can really help myself. And I'll look forward to reviewing that again. Yeah, and I wanted to ask, in September, in really deciding what we're going to do for the next year, it was very much stated that, we can look to PG&E rates that they'll be setting at the end of October and the end of December and the end of January. Those are kind of 3 important times of PG&E rate setting of some sort. And is it possible that you can make that available in the public meeting space here in the next few meetings, exactly what that is and what you'll be doing in comparison with that, with Bright Choice and however you'll be working with your programs to make that open and available and understandable and I guess transparent is the word, because for the I guess the October meeting or maybe it's the November meeting, these really important items about our future were quickly shuffled off into the consent calendar, and it was a bit quick. I mean, I think we're all happy with the decisions that you're making, but it just had that air of a bit of efficiency that kind of left us a bit out of it, and it can leave us out of it and so I'm just asking to speak of those things during meeting times. It's helpful. It's those little things that make for a good experience and just a better process for all of us. And I hope we can do that. And for people like me who are very much behind in learning and understanding and reading about these things, I will be trying to be doing my part with that. And but every little bit helps. So thanks, and thanks for hearing myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dan Kalb, Alita Dupree for the record, she and her. Good report. I've never spoken on a CEO report, I don't think. I really found the PCIA presentation to be very helpful, because until this time, I really never understood PCIA. But I'm seeing it from the flip side, especially in my previous talks about Nevada NRS Chapter 704 proceedings, which involve the unbundling of large customers from the incumbent utility. So thank you. I think what struck me most about this report is the possibility of a new joint powers authority to be involved in power development. EBC is big business now, moving about twice as much power as the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York uses for traction to run subways and railroads. And large corporations such as Amazon and Walmart are getting into the game of being able to develop partnerships to produce large amounts of renewable energy. So I like the idea of us partnering with other CCAs and having general managers and CEOs at the table, much like the Clipper Executive Board, which is a group of transit general managers and CEOs that gather together to build and manage the Clipper Fare program, which I'm sure you're all familiar with and use. So yes, I look forward to us bringing this JPA matter forward and continue to be a strong and forceful advocate concerning PCIA, so we can continue to have affordable, clean power for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, please.
Eric Brooks, your microphone isn't available. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Eric Brooks, I'm the coordinator of Californians for Energy Choice. We're a statewide organization that was created back in 2009 by organizers for community choice programs all over the state. And we fight to protect community choice from being weakened and to expand it in the state. Two comments on the CEO report. One is on the PCIA. You know, the law AB 117 that created community choice that passed over 18 years ago, and the first community choice program launched in Marin over 10 years ago. And the original purpose of the PCIA was supposed to be an early on fix for customers leaving PG&E and the other investor-owned utilities in a way that would rock the boat as far as their future energy contracts go. But after 18 years of the law being in place and over 10 years of a lot of community choice programs being in place now, it is really absurd that a multi-billion-dollar corporation like PG&E is claiming that it still needs the PCIA at all. And the one thing I didn't hear in the report is that staff, not just of this community choice program, but of all the community choice programs in California and the boards need to start pushing for the PCIA to be gotten rid of. PG&E is now in a position where it knows how many customers it's going to lose over what period of time and can plan its energy purchases for the future without the PCIA being in place at all. And we should no longer be allowing them to have this crutch, which actually enables them to just figure out ways to jack up the price on community choice programs so that we're less competitive against PG&E. So that needs to become part of the discussion. Then I also wanted to mention on the JPA issue, I would strongly urge staff to communicate with all of us organizers out here that helped create community choice in the first place, because there are all sorts of reasons over the past decade, especially with our fights in Sacramento against PG&E and others, that we have been considering repeatedly. It would really help us if we had a joint powers authority for the entire state, or at least for the Northern California region, for the community choice programs, for a lot of different reasons, not just the reasons stated in the CEO report. So I think it's really important that the CEO reach out to the activists in the East Bay community and statewide to say, hey, we're talking about this JPA, come to the table and talk to us about what you would want in it. So please do open up that public process. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chair.
Is that it for public comment?
That is, yes, there are no speakers.
Okay, with that is the CEO report, and that's an informational item. So we're going to move on. Thank you for that. And now we are at our bittersweet agenda item, if I remember the agenda correctly, by saying so long and heartfelt thank yous to a number of our board members over the past few or more than few years. So first, just as a group, I want to just I'm sorry, did I miss? Hold on a second. I'm scrolling up here. My apologies. Okay, yeah. I just want to say that being on this board, many of you in different cities either volunteered to do it or were asked to do it, and I just want to share that I want to first of all thank everybody who's been choosing to or agreeing to serve on this board representing your city. This is a significant. This is one of the newest JPAs, as we know, in Alameda County and Tracy, but it's also one of the largest and growing. And so the impact that this can have and has already have and will have is quite significant, not just in the East Bay, but hopefully beyond our borders. So you're part of something important, and those board members who have been here for the first phase, the first few years, are a big part of getting ourselves off the ground and stable and successful in this initial few years. And those of us returning will continue that effort and step it up. And we should all be very appreciative of all those who have been on here, and very proud for all of us to be on this board, either for a period of time or however long. So I just want to say that to begin with. And then I want to call out just some individual names and give everybody an opportunity to say a few words. I know with a number of people leaving, it could take a while for people to say some words, but I think that's okay. I think that once every couple of years when this happens, I think it's okay that we take a little time and do this. So I'm going to ask Diane, why don't you and I alternate? So why don't you take one of the ones on your list and start, and then we'll give people a chance to say a few words about each person for those who want to.
Okay, absolutely. Well, one person I definitely wanted to acknowledge is Mayor Era, who's been on the board since 2016. Mayor Era has been an integral part of the board. He's done some really good work on the executive committee as well. He has always been an unwavering representative of his community and an advocate of making even our base product as renewable as possible. His work will will live on, and he's not going that far away. He's going to remain an alternate, so we can still call on him when we need to. But I just wanted to express our gratitude for his years of service on this board.
Okay, I want to give people a chance to say a few words. Well, actually, why don't we do all the, Diane and I will do all the back and forth, and then we'll give everybody a chance to say whatever they want about any of the people. That'll be more efficient, I think. Okay, so I'm gonna just say a few words about Al Mendal. First of all, Al, pronounce your last name exactly how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Mendel.
Mendel, okay.
Mendel, yeah.
I'm probably the only one who pronounces it, mispronounced it. My apologies.
No, everybody pronounces it the way it looks, Mendel, but it's Mendel.
Okay, yeah. Well, so I just want to acknowledge and thank Al. He's been here since the beginning of this wonderful agency, and he has definitely not shied away and has really taken upon himself to ask questions, be engaged in the a range of issues that we have dealt with on EBCE. He's been a member of the executive committee for a few years, and I actually chaired this past year on the executive committee, and we appreciate that very much. And so he really has contributed a lot to this agency, and I know he's been on other joint powers authorities in the East Bay. And I think you were on your planning. Were you on your planning commission for a couple terms back before you were a council member? I think you were.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's really made not only a commitment to City of Hayward, obviously, but to our entire East Bay region as part of EBCE and other groups. And I just want to say we're going to miss your thoughtfulness, your inquiries, and so I just want to say thank you very much, Al, for all your commitment to EBCE. And so, Diane, before you go, we will give a chance for everybody to say words about the departing board members, and we will also put people on the spot for those of you who are departing, and we'll be asking you to say a few words if you like at the appropriate time. So, Diane, go ahead.
Thank you. We weren't expecting to lose member Tim Rude from the board, but due to a conflict with his work, he's no longer going to be able to serve. But I just wanted to mention that he's still going to be vice mayor of Piedmont, so he also won't be that far away. But he was first elected in 2014, the same year I was first elected to my city council. So he and I kind of grew up together in East Bay politics, and I've always appreciated his presence and his contributions on every board that we've sat in together. And he probably wins for longest commutes. He works for the city of San Jose and has struggled with getting back to meetings on time. And now that he was finally able to teleconference, that was all pulled away from him. So we still continue to appreciate his contributions to this board. Again, in its infancy, in its early days, his contribution is definitely appreciated.
Thank you. And Tim was on the original steering advisory committee in preparation of getting this all set up, representing Piedmont. So he's been here since the beginning. Since the beginning of time. No. So next, I'd like to thank Councilmember Hernandez from the city of San Leandro. Ed, yeah, I see Ed here. Ed, it will be, he's not leaving the East Bay, he's not leaving San Leandro, but he's leaving the San Leandro City Council, and so he will be leaving EBCE as well. And I just want to thank Ed for, again, for his tremendous commitment and thoughtfulness and attention to all the many of the issues that come up and have come up during our time on EBCE. He is also, among his efforts and engagement with EBCE, he has chaired our finance procurement committee for at least a year, maybe more, I don't recall, but at least a year. And I can tell you firsthand that he is, tries to be on top of our finances, ask numerous questions that need to be asked of staff, and really has shown a commitment to the success of this agency. And I just want to thank him for his tremendous work here. I know he was on other regional bodies as a representative of San Leandro, but we appreciate him very much for his commitment to EBCE. And we, of course, Ed, wish you all the best in everything you are doing and will be doing. And don't be a stranger. And I want to again thank you, Ed, for your tremendous commitment to EBCE's success.
Thank you, Dan. And I didn't have him on my list, but I hope you don't mind me mentioning, acknowledging Jerry Penton, although he served with us very shortly. Jerry served on the steering committee. And when he finally came around to bringing Pleasanton on to EBCE, he was a key player in communicating with his staff and with his community and evangelizing all of the benefits of joining a CCA. And having served with him for many years on Stop Waste, I know that he is a true environmentalist, and I have always appreciated his tough questions, even when staff hasn't.
Thank you, Diane. I would concur with that. We both served with, many of us have, with Jerry on Stop Waste for many years, and the East Bay, the Tri-Valley, the East Bay will lose his active presence as an elected official, even though he will still be a community person throughout part of the county. But yes, so you're right. We should thank, Jerry's not here today, I don't think, but we should thank Jerry for his tremendous commitment over the past year here and several years to our county.
And welcome, Kathy.
I'm sorry?
I was remiss to say welcome to Member Narum, who is sitting in for Pleasanton. We're so glad to have you on board.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay, and who else is on our list, Diane? Why don't you do Nick?
Sure. Yep. Nick Pilch. He is not here. Albany is now being represented. I'm not sure if in perpetuity, but at least tonight by Honorable Peggy McQuaid. Nick has been serving his community in different appointed and elected capacities since 2006. So he is very dedicated to his community of Albany, and he is a staunch environmentalist. I think that's going to be written on his headstone one day, long time from now. So I was honored to have him serve on this committee. He is another person who asks a lot of tough questions and is really paying attention. So he's another face that we'll miss, and he leaves a big hole, which Member McQuaid, I hope you're ready to fill.
Well, someone will be. I don't know if it'll be me, but someone will be.
We're a fun bunch. I hope it's you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Question, Mr. Patino from Union City. There was a lack of clarity as to whether you are likely returning. Are you returning to EBCE board at the first of the year?
Yes, I will be.
You will be. Okay. Then we're not going to say goodbye to you. We are fortunate to have you continue. So thank you. That's great. Good news. Glad to hear
Unless
that.
you know something I don't. Yeah.
No, not at all. So and finally, I believe last but not least is of course Supervisor Scott Haggerty. I think we all know that, as you heard earlier today, as we were reminded earlier this evening, as we all know, Scott was the impetus and the person who pushed this through over a number of years at the county supervisor level and with the initial countywide advisory committee that many of us were on, and as well as non-elected stakeholders were on. This was a lengthy process that he and his staff engaged in, balancing, juggling all the stakeholders and interests and desires from different cities and city attorneys and on and on and on. And I just wanted to say what we've all heard people say and what we've all said, to just acknowledge and appreciate and thank Scott's tremendous leadership in getting this agency started and overseeing the agency in its first few years. And really, I don't think we'd be here today, at least not this far along, had it not been for Scott's committed efforts. So I want to thank you, Scott, acknowledge everything that you've done. I know you'll be paying attention to what we do from afar or not so far. And I think we all appreciate everything that you have done over the years, or recent years, in getting this to where we are today. So I can't say enough. None of us could say enough to acknowledge your tremendous contribution. I believe that's the entire list. So I'm going to open up, if people could raise hands. If you have the hand raise feature, you should. I will call on anybody and everybody to say as much as you would like to say about one or more of the departing board members. And then we'll have the departing board members themselves say a few words. Let's see who, oops, there we go. Okay, I see Mary Sutter, our Community Advisory Committee Chair.
Let me get my video on so I can at least talk and people can see me as well. And I think I just wanted to have a shout out to Al Mendel. I'll say your name right this time. Al and I talked a year, I think, before I chose to put in an application for this. And I really appreciated how he thought about EBCE and his passion that I could tell in terms of thinking about energy. Which actually led me to put in my application. Most likely I would have been on the sidelines and not been able to be involved or gotten myself involved to the level I have. So I really have appreciated the time that we had, and I will miss your voice.
Thank you, Mary. Councilmember McQuaid from Albany.
Thank you. I want to give a shout out to Nick Pilch, who's not here tonight, just left our council after 6 years. And I just want to say that of all the things he was involved in, and you know there were many, I think this might have been his favorite. And as Diane mentioned, he was just passionate about the environment and about community energy, and really encouraged us and pushed us to be one of the original joiners in this. And I'm not sure without Nick's encouragement if we would have jumped right in. So I think, you know, we all, the city of Albany and the board, owes him a debt of gratitude for that.
Thank you, Peggy. Absolutely. And Councilmember Monroe from Livermore.
All right, well, so first of all, a shout out to everyone on this board, those who are departing and those who are remaining. This, for me, as I say often, is probably the longest reach for me in terms of my skill set. And I appreciate those who have helped make it easy along the way. Having said that, I wanted to specifically say Al Mendel has been one of those people, and I will miss seeing his face and hearing his voice. Look to Hayward as an example, which, you know, moving along and maybe reaching out to you on that. Nick Pilch is not here, but I served with him and others who are here on the marketing committee and marketing and legislative committee. And the questions he asked were in education. I think I probably learned more in that committee. Well, see, that's unfair, but I learned a whole lot on that committee. And then, of course, Supervisor Haggerty, who was instrumental in making this happen, and I watched, I think this was the first place I watched him pushing to shape this organization to make sure that everyone was participating on committees and making a structure happen. It was an education in how you make an organization, how you form an organization, and then how you make the organization work. And so thank you all.
Thank you. And let's see, Mayor Martinez from Emeryville.
Thank you. In addition to the members that I got to honor personally, I kind of feel like Dorothy at the end of The Wizard of Oz. I'll miss you most of all. But I do want to have a word about some of you. Al, your thoughtfulness and your desire to push your community further and further into renewables and lower the greenhouse gas impacts on your community for what seemed like reasons that really come from your heart always touched me. Ed, your capacity and interest to read contracts and ask the nitpicky questions, I've always appreciated. And of course, Supervisor Haggerty, and I mentioned this when he stepped down as chair. When we started this board, I was the only woman who was serving at the time, and he he made it his mission to reach out to individual communities and encourage folks like Mayor May to come serve on the board. And I so appreciate having my colleagues, Member Monroe, Member Hernandez, and now Member Narum and Member McQuaid. Hopefully you'll stay on. But I do think I really appreciate Supervisor Haggerty's contributions overall, but especially to the diversity of this board. So I thank you and I salute you.
Thank you, absolutely. Let's see, Councilmember Hannon from Newark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to echo some of the other comments, just a big thank you to all of my colleagues for your commitment to this board. When we are elected to office, most of us don't realize the significant commitment we make to attend other board meetings. And this certainly has been one where it has taken a significant amount of time to get up to speed, to understand the issues, your commitment to your local communities and doing the right thing in terms of trying to preserve our environment for our communities is admirable, and you should all be applauded for your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Fremont Mayor May.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank all of the board members, and over the last couple of years, how much we truly appreciate the ability to get together. Mayor Arreguín, Councilmember Mandel, Mayor Pilch, and also Councilmember Ed Hernandez. I know that when we had the meetings in person, it was nice that you were always bringing things to share with all of us, and not just the knowledge, but also the goodies and treats, which I think we miss when we're not together. I also wanted to thank Councilmember Tim Rod and Jerry Penton. I know it's not that we have been able to spend as much time together. And I also wanted to thank Vice Chair Diane Martinez, because it has been nice to have other women in these types of roles, especially when it comes to having representation on a Joint Powers Authority. I think it's very important. And your leadership and activism in terms of the contracts and the executive team, that has been very important for all of us. And finally, of course, thanking Supervisor Haggerty for his leadership in terms of getting the funding from the county, and also the ability for us to repay that, I think was important for us to get more participation and the support from the other fellow cities. Looking forward to seeing all of you, hopefully in person in the new year.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate that. And I don't see any other hands raised. We're going to get to the actual. Okay, I'll get to Nick in a second. I want to first just call. I think we have one or two members of the public, and then we'll come back to the actual departing board members and to Nick. So, Madam Clerk, I see one or two, just one maybe.
Yes, I have Igor Trigup.
All right, Igor.
Is unmuted.
Hi, Chair and board members. I have so much appreciation, and I'm speaking both as an individual and on behalf of the Sierra Club, so much appreciation for all of you who will either continue your service or sadly for us, will be moving on to other things. And while there are so many board members who are leaving this board, but I know that we will still continue to work together. I mean, shout out to Mayor Arreguín. We talk quite often and work very productively on many things. But I just wanted to really appreciate Supervisor Haggerty in many ways. Without your efforts, Supervisor, there would not be an EBCE. We would not be getting community choice energy. We would not have a clean, green and cost-effective alternative to investor-owned utilities. You are a true visionary. And while I know that no one person can do this alone, you truly championed this agency and its creation. And for that, and on behalf of the 35,000 odd members of the Sierra Club SF Bay chapter, just wanted to express our profound appreciation and gratitude and wish you all the best in your retirement years.
Okay, thank you, Igor. Appreciate those comments. Nick, why don't I call on you now?
All right. Well, I will be very brief here. I was interviewed for this job. Thank you, Stephanie. No, do it. Do it. I love it. I can do it in 2 minutes. So let's go. I want to say that I was interviewed for this job almost 4 years ago by Al and Scott. I don't know if Jesse, you were on the interview panel, but certainly you were a member of the board at the time. And so, I just want to say it's been the honor of my life to serve in this position and to have a chance to work with all of you. And so I'm really just so pleased that I've had the experience. Certainly sad to see you leave EBCE. I know I will stay in touch with all of you and continue to work in a more professional capacity with some, and hopefully just maintain a personal relationship with others. So thank you very much, and just been such a pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So I'm going to ask, it's not required, no one's required to say anything, but those who are departing and are here tonight, I'm going to ask or give you the opportunity to say a few words. I'll just start with Mayor Arreguín of Berkeley. Jesse?
Well, it's really been a pleasure to serve on this board with all of you. I've been an advocate for community choice energy, probably going back 15 years. And so to be able to serve on this board and help launch this agency was really a pleasure. And I was talking to Nick this morning, to look at where we are now is really amazing. And not just that we're a fiscally stable organization, we're a growing CCA, we're a leader in the state and in the country. Also that we are advancing our local development agenda, I think is really, really exciting. So it's really been a pleasure to work with Al. I think you're really brilliant and thoughtful questions and comments and leadership has helped guide the agency. To the other departing board members, thank you for your service and contributions. And last but certainly not least, to father of East Bay Community Energy, Supervisor Scott Haggerty. There's so many things, and I've been talking about Scott for probably the last month or two. We'll be doing more of that in the next month. There's so many things that Supervisor Haggerty has been able to accomplish in his 24 years of service on the Board of Supervisors. Major transportation projects, countywide policies, advancing state and federal legislation. But I think this agency is really going to be a lasting legacy that you're leaving, not just for us, but for future generations and for the planet. Because at the end of the day, this is about trying to combat the devastating impacts of climate change. And so I want to thank Supervisor Haggerty for his vision, for his leadership, for his tenacity, and for getting us to this point. And that's something that definitely needs to be recognized, needs to be appreciated. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll go to Councilmember Hernandez, San Leandro.
Thank you. And what would you say if politicians didn't speak up, right? So of course, we're going to say a few words. Thank you, Chair Cal. Thanks, Vice Chair Diane Martinez. To Member Mendel, also to mentorship throughout the years, the last couple of years, understanding more about this. Mayor Arreguín, thank you very much. I like the discussions we've had and through these meetings and look to further those in the future. I think with Scott, the first year I came in, he's like, "Oh, you're in charge of the snacks." I'm like, all right, I guess I'm in charge of the snacks. So let's make sure we get those covered. And I always run from my office job and get to the Trader Joe's and get the snacks and rushing to get them because I was nervous. I don't want to upset Scott, Godfather over there. So I really wanted to keep that guy happy. But it's always been a blessing to work with all of you. sort of felt like a startup, and everything was evolving, changing, figuring out how things worked out, they didn't work out, and asking tons of questions just to get grounded and look smart. So I like to say that, you know, I might not be, my term might be ending, but my passion for the community that you're all a part of, I believe, and encompass, to make it a better place for our future generations. I'm committed to doing that, and I'll be back. I think in some capacity or another, you might see me on the sidelines, but I'll be working my way back in some other ways to still be involved, and we'll see what's next. But I've enjoyed the opportunity to serve here. I'll continue serving, and I appreciate everybody's efforts to make our planet a better place for us and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much. And Councilmember Mendel from Hayward. I think I got it right now.
Thank you. It's okay. Everyone pronounces it Mendel, so I don't even notice anymore. Thank you. I do want to echo, Jesse, you put it really well, your comments about our founding father, Scott Haggerty. We would not be here without you, Scott. And I really am very, very grateful for that. You know, of all I'm retiring from council, announced it a number of months back, and of all the achievements that I'm proud to have been a part of in Hayward, the one that I'm most excited about is the fact that we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions citywide by more than 25% in 1 decade. That shows that it can be done, right? If the entire world were on the same path, we'd be feeling a lot less anxious about climate change than we do now. But it can be done, and East Bay Community Energy is a huge, huge part of that. I could not be more proud of the service here, my own service here, and I'm just thrilled to have been able to work with all of you. You know, Jesse and Tim and Nick and Jerry and Ed and Scott, you guys are leaving, and I honor you for your service. We're all going to have some free time, so hopefully we'll get to keep in touch. Except for you, Jesse. I know you're you're sticking around. But really, to everyone on this board, it's a strong board. It really is. It's a strong team, strong staff. This agency is in good hands. And I know that's part of what makes me so happy to be retiring right now. I know my city council's in good hands. This board is in good hands. And you got to meet my replacement. She was permanently appointed, Elisa Marquez. You'll get to know her over the coming months. She's really fantastic. And once you get to know her, you won't miss me at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Al. Thank you very much for all your commitment. And finally, I believe the other people, other than Scott, everybody else who is leaving is not here today. So I'm going to turn it over to, last but not least, to Supervisor Scott Haggerty.
Well, I guess at this point it's all been said. I'm a little pissed off at Jesse. I didn't know he was leaving. I figured I was leaving Jesse to kind of take over and do things, but forget that. We'll now give it to Diane and let her run things. You know, listen, this is a good board, just like Al said. It's a strong board. It's a great board. We leave you in fiscally good shape. Don't screw it up. Taxpayers are watching. Take care of our friends down in San Joaquin County, in Tracy, because maybe there's other cities that may want to join us. Dan, it's been a pleasure to work with you. Look, it's just been a great ride. It's been a great ride. I remember when we found Nick, to be honest with you. I think, Diane, weren't you on the interview? Yeah. Oh, you weren't.
I wasn't. I feel like we were getting down the road with someone else, and then you threw it all up in the air.
That's exactly right. And I just kind of, you know, I have a nemesis on MTC. His name is Nick Josephowitz, and many of you probably know Nick. And Nick and I actually worked pretty well together. And he suggested Nick Chassett. And when the applications came in, Nick's name wasn't there. And we started interviewing these people, and we're like, who are these people? And I said, well, wait a minute, let's try one other person. And I called Nick and he said, yeah, I'll interview with you guys. And history was made from there. Nick became our first CEO. And I think that was a great hire by this board. We all did great on that. So enjoyed working with all of you. It's been fun. The representatives from my district, I've enjoyed working with each and every one of you on various issues. And I'd like to say I'll be around watching you, but it will be from afar. So thank you and enjoy your time. And to those that are leaving, congratulations on that too.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for everything you've done for this agency and even more broadly for the county and the Bay Area on so many other regional bodies. And I believe, Nick, you're going to have some not so fancy plaques or certificates for all the departing members. Is that right?
Yes, we will. So actually, we will be having this spring a ribbon cutting for the Scott Haggerty Wind Energy Center, which is a 57 megawatt wind farm that has been constructed in the Altamont Pass. And we're actually going to be getting nice little mementos from that project that all of our board members, including our departing board members, will get, commemorating as sort of a commemoration of their service on this board. And then for everybody as a token of serving on the board as well.
So Nick, I want to thank you for naming that wind farm after me. I've had a lot of things named after me in the last few days, but I think probably the people would say the most appropriate one is the wind farm.
Okay, no joke. That's too many jokes could come from that one. All right, that sounds great, Nick. So you'll let us all know when that date is set. I don't know how that may not be able to be in person for most people, but whatever it is going to be, you'll let us all know.
Yes, we will. Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. That is our heartfelt so longs and thank yous to the departing board members, and we will now move on to the rest of the agenda.
So can the departing members leave?
I don't think so. We need people for a quorum. Anybody can leave if they need to, but otherwise it's best to stay around to keep our quorum.
But good try.
Okay, next is our Community Advisory Committee report. Mary?
Just a short update for you all tonight in terms of what we talked about on Monday. That is, I'm not going to mention later in the agenda. We heard from staff around how they're planning to use Salesforce for metrics. This is all part of the CAC initiative that we're pushing at this point. And this was more of the details around how some of the data is going to be collected to enable tracking some of the metrics. And at some point, the board will be seeing these metrics, but this was just the start of it. And so we heard about those various metrics in our meeting. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And we have, as you do on a monthly basis, you sent over the agenda with some notes on some of the agenda items, which I think we all received. So thank you for that as well, as always. That's often very helpful. Okay, and now we have an action item for some end of year COVID related grants. Nick, is this you?
It is. So since the onset of COVID-19, EDC has worked to reallocate funds in our budget that we have felt where we could avoid the expenditure, and have sought to reallocate those funds to COVID-19 relief work. In addition to that, we've also very proactively gone out to some of our energy supplier partners and customers and sought their participation in these relief grants as well. In total, so far we have granted and raised over $2 million for COVID relief grants. Those grants have gone to, I think at this point, over 60 different community-based organizations across Alameda County and in the city of Tracy. So, as we get towards the end of the year, in the holiday season, I think we feel like, a lot of people are struggling, still are struggling. And between this latest round of sheltering in place and just sort of the weight of 10 months now of these challenges, we felt like if we could find some additional resources to bring to bear to support our community, we should do that. And so EBC staff spent some time reviewing budgets, and we identified $250,000 from our marketing budget and from our local development budget, predominantly from the marketing budget, that we, I guess it's split roughly equally actually, from those two budgets that we do not expect to spend this fiscal year. So from the marketing budget, I had mentioned earlier that when we sent out our power content labels, instead of having to send out 500,000+ mailers, we were able to email over 350,000 of those. Well, you can imagine, not emailing is a little bit less expensive than printing and mailing postcards. So those were savings that we did not forecast in the budget setting process because we weren't aware that the PUC would let us use these emails. And then in the local development program, we have a number of energy programs that we're running. One of them, our commercial energy efficiency program, has run into some delays related to a partner that we were going to work with to implement the program. The result has been that program is likely not going to be something we're going to be able to deploy this fiscal year. And so while those funds could be held back and earmarked for next year, we felt like given the urgency of COVID-19, it made sense to reallocate those funds to these grants. And then we will come back in the next budget cycle and seek to fund that energy efficiency program. So in terms of the grants that we're recommending, we're focusing on agencies and community-based organizations who we have had a well-established engagement with, and where we really understand the impact that they're having on the community. So each of these agencies has already received a grant from EBC. So what we're recommending are 4 $50,000 grants to 4 entities that operate really for the benefit of residents across Alameda County, and are really focused on sort of 2 core areas. One is public health, whether it's the health of the nurses and doctors who are at the front line, or the patients and families who are facing the greatest impacts right now of COVID. And the other one is food security. And so, one of my colleagues sent an article around today, actually, highlighting the fact that just this week, the Alameda County Food Bank had to turn away 200 families who were waiting to pick up food because they had run out. And so, we are facing an unprecedented period of food insecurity for so many of our neighbors. So with sort of those 2 priorities in mind, we're recommending these 4 grants, $50,000 each to Children's Hospital Oakland to support their COVID-19 relief fund, and $50,000 to the Alameda County Health System to support their procurement of PPE for their frontline staff and to support their social work department. So they're able to have critical resources for patients and their families. Then another two sets of $50,000 grants, one to Meals on Wheels Alameda County, and that's going to support Meals on Wheels operations across the county. So we're really going to focus on making sure that those $50,000 go to support Meals on Wheels north, south, central, and north, south, central, and east, right? So our four sort of key core regions. Similarly for the Alameda County Food Bank, we'll be focusing on ensuring that these funds are dispersed in a manner that benefits all Alameda County residents. And so back to the theme of health, we're proposing a $15,000 grants to each of Washington Hospital in Fremont, St. Rose's Hospital in Hayward, and Access Health in Livermore. And then finally, a $5,000 grant to a to-be-determined food bank in Tracy in consultation with Dan and city staff. So that is that.
There we go. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. And I'm going to first call on board members for comments. I think Supervisor Haggerty has a question or comment.
So Nick, appreciate you doing this. I think this is great to get the money back into the community, which is certainly the advantage of being a member of this agency. But when you are giving these larger grants out, what guarantee do we have that they're going to buy PPE, or to be very honest with you? And maybe what made me bring that question to mind was AHS. Are they going to submit invoices or anything? Or are we just going to give them $50,000 and hope they buy PPE?
So we had provided AHS with a previous grant, and it was specifically in our grant agreement. The grant agreement explicitly required that the funds be used for the purchase of PPE. And they have a grant report that they have to provide. No, we do not require the specific invoices be submitted, but the grant agreement does explicitly state that the funds must be used for that use.
So, not being an auditor, and I'm sure we're being audited like any other public agency on a yearly basis, I think. Would they raise a red flag if we gave money to an organization and didn't have any backup?
So we have talked to INDER, our general counsel, about this, and have had some discussions also with our accountant. We have not explicitly talked to our auditor about it, but our accountant. And that is actually why we have these grant agreements that have reporting requirements associated with them. So they must sign the grant agreements. These grant agreements are legally binding documents, and they include these reporting clauses. And that is very explicitly to ensure that we have a paper trail when we're going through our audit.
Okay, thanks, Nick. And I'm still pissed off at Jesse.
Okay. Essie, Councilmember Hernandez from San Leandro.
Yes, Nick, thank you very much. Having volunteered recently at the Alameda County Food Bank the last couple of weeks, so there is a high demand and need. It's gone from 1 to 5 in families to 1 to 4. They're buying almost $2 million worth of food. They've gone from 2,000 volunteers, and they've structured to 500 to commit on month-long commitments on different days. They're still looking for volunteers. I think it's very great to do this, and I'm very supportive of that. Just want to give a shout out and thank you very much. And are we waiting for a public comment to move the item, Chair Cal?
Anybody can make a motion while we're still having comment. You're welcome to make a motion.
If I may do so.
Okay. That's been moved by Ed Hernandez from San Leandro.
I'll second Jaime.
Jaime Patino from Union City is seconding the motion. And next on the queue is Mayor May of Fremont.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you so much for EBC for the continued support and partnership. I think when we think, considering the energy that's needed to run our communities, certainly right now in these challenging fiscal times, having the funding to support these programs is also equally critical. And I appreciate the support that's being given to Washington Hospital as well as the other healthcare agencies for PPE, as unfortunately during this winter period, we've been seeing an increase. And certainly with the food, it's fuel and energy for our communities and the individuals in our communities. And there's just such a tremendous outpour in needs. And I want to thank so many of our fellow neighboring cities for this partnership and the agencies that have come together to set forth. I was a little overwhelmed just seeing during the Thanksgiving holiday how we transitioned from delivering sit-down meals to doing drive-through pickups for Thanksgiving meals. And I know that here in Alameda County for our drive-through food Thanksgiving, we handed out over 3,321 meals. And so, just really appreciate this continued effort. And I know that, especially with the Alameda County Food Bank, they've been a consistent partner, and hopefully these will help carry us through these very challenging times. And I thank EBC for this concerted effort.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you so much. And next is Mayor or Mayor-elect, I'm not sure, Hernandez from Dublin.
It's now officially mayor as of last night. Supervisor Scott Haggerty swore me in like he did back in 2016. So I just wanted to say, honestly, thank you to staff and Nick for really thinking outside of the box. And I'll make it quick, just trying to help so many individuals out there. COVID is something that's everyone's affected by, and so in some way, shape, or form. And I honestly just wanted to say, I applaud staff for thinking outside of the box.
Thank you. And let's see, next in queue is Livermore Councilmember Monroe.
Actually, it's Vice Mayor now. Who knew?
Vice Mayor.
Which is I'm getting used to. I wanted to just echo what Mayor Hernandez said in terms of being grateful. This is precisely the reason I think that CTA, or one of the reasons I think the CTAs it's one of their purposes. And I noticed Access Community Health was on there. That's a particular favorite of mine, just because of the good work it does in providing mental and physical health for the community. All of the organizations are good, but that one always stands out to me. But all of them, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm going to just say a few quick words myself. Nick, thank you for putting this together. You and the staff putting this together. These are an excellent variety, a range of organizations and institutions that could certainly use the money. I'm of course thrilled to see Meals on Wheels there, which the Meals on Wheels of Alameda County kind of is like an umbrella of other agencies in parts of the county that deal with Meals on Wheels. So thank you for that. Children's Hospital, of course, serves the entire East Bay, but is physically situated in my council district. So appreciate that as well. These are all excellent choices. And I see no other hands in the queue. We do have one or two speakers, Madam Clerk. Is that right? Public speakers?
That's correct. I have Blair Beekman. And your microphone is available, Blair.
Hi. Hello. Yeah, Blair here. Sorry about that. I will pass on this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other public speakers and no other hands raised, we could call the roll to approve the item that has been motioned and seconded.
Albany?
Yes.
Berkeley?
Yes.
Dublin?
Yes.
Fremont?
Yes.
Hayward?
Yes.
Livermore?
Yes.
Newark?
Yes.
Pleasanton?
Yes.
San Leandro?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Union City?
Yes.
Alameda County?
Yes.
Oakland?
Yes.
Apologies, Emeryville?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously with attendance.
Excellent. Unanimous. Thank you so much all. Okay, and next we have agenda item number 11, JPA member election on default product at enrollment. This is mostly for our our new cities. Who's presenting on this? Nick or Annie?
Annie?
You have Annie Hernandez
Annie going once, Annie going twice? Nope, okay. So
here.
I just allowed, there she is.
I'm here. I'm here.
We
Sorry.
promote her to panelist.
I had to click the right button. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good evening, board. Sorry for that technical difficulty there. So we are asking the board to do a number of actions related to the new community enrollment, which is coming up in April, but in fact, there is a critical enrollment open period starting February 1. So there's a bunch of stuff that we need to do on the back end over the next 6 weeks in order to prepare. We have confirmed with the cities of Newark and Tracy that they will be defaulting onto the standard service of Bright Choice. The city of Pleasanton has asked to be able to take this to their sort of somewhat new city council on January 19th of next year. So the first action we're asking of the board is to essentially get pre-approval to set up the backend systems to support whatever decision is made by their council in terms of what their default product will be. The second item that we're bringing to the board tonight are some minor changes to the service terms and conditions, primarily to reflect that we have new members and what their default service will be. You'll see in the attachment that we have simply left the Pleasanton item to be updated in the future based on their vote on the 19th. And then the last action we're asking of the board tonight is to amend the net energy metered tariffs. This is again to reflect the new communities and some definitions that we use for customers and how the policy applies to them. So new customers had previously been any customer with an installed system after June 1, 2018. What we are now redefining new customers as is, yes, that same date for the initial service territory, for the expanded service territory. That new customer date will be for any systems that are installed after April 1, 2021. So that essentially makes it the same treatment for all customers based on the date of initial program launch in their service area. I will make a note of, you'll see in the resolution that we ask for board approval to set the default based on what the city of Pleasanton decides on January 19th. We do make a note that if the board, if their city council for whatever reason is not able to take that vote, that the board approves that we will simply set them to the Bright Choice product as our standard default offering. There is a small fee from our backend service provider, SMUD, to do this. We have budget allocated for this. I will also note that that $20K is not just to set Pleasanton's default. It is to essentially reestablish Brilliant 100 as a voluntary option in all of these the new service territories, since that is something that we had changed as of this past summer when the decision was made for voluntary opt-ups and new customers not to be placed on that product. And with that, I can field any questions that you have.
There we go. Thank you, Annie. First, any questions by board members? Supervisor Haggerty. Scott, you're muted.
Yes, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to say is I'd like to move this item, noting there are no speakers in attendance from the attendees, and just say how great this is for the agency. And I'm really happy that we're getting to the point where we are expanding. We're adding cities that I had hoped to join us in the beginning, but they didn't, and that's okay. They were a little bit more cautious. And then I'm super proud that we have left Alameda County and are now working with our friends in Tracy. And I can tell you that there's a lot of collaboration on many levels with Tracy, and they're a great group to work with. So if I could move the item, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. That motion by Supervisor Haggerty. Do
I'd
I
like to second that, please, from Pleasanton.
Okay, Councilmember, how do you pronounce your last name, Kathy? I'm sorry.
Narum. Norwegian.
Narum.
Narum.
Got it. Okay, Councilmember Narum from Pleasanton is seconding that motion. And I do not see anybody, Madam Clerk, I see nobody in the queue for the public comment and no more people in the queue for panelists. So we can take the roll on that.
Could I make a quick comment, please?
Please.
I'm sorry.
Please.
So we, as stated, we had unfortunately we had a long council meeting last night within land use issue. We didn't adjourn until after midnight. So there was not opportunity to take this up, but it is at the top of the agenda for the 19th of January. Former Councilmember Penton and I and our staff are going to be recommending to our council to make our default the Brilliant 100. We want to be green, and this ties in nicely with we're in the process of redoing our CAP 2.0. And so we look forward to a good discussion. I also believe that our staff at that time will be recommending that the city's electric choice would be the renewable 100, to step up and tell our residents that, you know, we're committed to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and again in conjunction with the development of our CAP 2.0. So this is a big move for us. I will admit we are a bit conservative. That's the way things tend to happen in Pleasanton. But ultimately, I think we're absolutely getting to the right decisions here. So I look forward to being able to tell you where we end up, and who knows, we may be surprised, but it will be in a good place though. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I see no other hands in the queue. So Madam Clerk, we could call the roll.
Thank you. Albany?
Yes.
Berkeley?
Yes.
Dublin?
Yes.
Fremont?
Yes.
Hayward?
Yes.
Livermore?
Yes.
Newark?
Yes.
Pleasanton?
Yes.
San Leandro?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Union City? Union City? They dropped.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Alameda County? Emeryville?
Did you get me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm yes.
Oakland?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
There we go. Thank you very much. That's excellent. And now we're moving on to item 12, the IRP, Integrated Resource Plan results. This is an action item. And is this Nick or is Stephanie here with us today?
So Stephanie will be here. Let me just sort of set up maybe a quick preamble, and then Stephanie will get into the details here. So, you know, what we're bringing for really from the first day that I joined EBCE, you know, I think Al in particular, but Jesse and many others have really pushed me and my team to think boldly about the long-term clean energy trajectory for EBCE. You know, how do we get cleaner? How do we get there faster? And so it's in that context that you know, we've really been focused over the last number of months on developing a fairly thorough analysis of the pathways to 100% clean energy. And we today are bringing forward an option, you know, a couple options, but really an option to set 100% clean energy as EBCE's goal for its energy mix in 2030. And, you know, the only sort of final point I'll make is when we have in the past talked about 100% clean energy, say for Brilliant 100, it's really a very different product than what we're talking about in 2030. Today, when most folks talk about 100% clean, it really is predominantly buying from large hydro resources out of state. And what we're talking about in setting 100% clean for EBC in 2030 is a really heretofore unprecedented level of investment in clean renewable energy in our community and across California. It's really a transformative effort, and so I think that's what's so exciting about this opportunity. And with that, I will let Stephanie take it over, and I'm sure we'll have a spirited discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. We can move to the next slide. So as Nick mentioned, we are asking the board to establish a 2030 clean energy goal today. And in order to help inform that decision, I'll be presenting an overview of our integrated resource planning analysis results and some of the trade-offs between the different emissions targets that we examined. Next slide, please. So I think most of you will recall that EBCE took a phased approach to its IRP analysis this year. And so that was meant to ensure that we met all of our compliance requirements on time, but also were able to complete a more comprehensive analysis of a range of different greenhouse gas targets. So phase one was focused on the commission compliance requirements, and that was filed in September. And for that phase one, the commission required us to look at two targets. So those were EBCE's proportional share of a statewide electric sector target of 46 million metric tons. And that's the one the commission kind of adopted as the reference case. And then another scenario of 38 million metric tons. Under phase two, we wanted to rely on more EBCE specific and kind of current assumptions, as well as evaluate more ambitious targets than just that 46 and 38. So for this analysis, in order to be able to kind of compare across that range of different targets, we sort of recalibrated what was filed with the CPUC, but under those two 46 and 38 emissions targets, and then looked at our proportional share of a 30 million metric ton scenario, as well as a net 0 million metric ton scenario. And I do want to highlight that, the way that the emissions accounting is done is on a net annual basis. So when we say 0 million metric tons, that's not an hour by hour matching. This table really just kind of is a high level summary of those scenario results. And so the top row there shows the percentage of carbon free energy as a percentage of load. And obviously that's increasing as you go across the table. The next row is affordability. And so what we're showing here is kind of a snapshot of our projected total portfolio costs in the year 2030, but brought back to real 2020 dollars. So for the scenario one, that's about 600 million. And then in each of the scenarios, as we go progressively lower in terms of the emissions, there's a percentage increase of those total portfolio costs, which include all of the investment in the long-term portfolio, resource adequacy purchases, additional cost to serve load. So you can see that those incremental costs for the deeper reduction scenarios are a relatively small portion of overall costs, but they are increasing as we go towards zero. And then the other thing to keep in mind here is that these are just for 2030, so cumulatively across the next 10 years, the costs are a bit higher. The next thing to to note is that the resource mix of our long-term portfolio, so you know, the projected portion of our load that will be, you know, serving with long-term new contracted resources is the same across each of these scenarios. And so what makes the difference in terms of achieving those deeper greenhouse gas reductions is the makeup of the short-term contracts and transactions for the remaining portion that we need to serve our load. And we reviewed that resource mix, I think a couple meetings ago, but just a reminder, it is, you know, largely solar paired with storage, as well as a significant amount of standalone storage, and to the extent that it's available, hydro. So for risk management, again, that's going to look the same across the scenarios because we're characterizing risk management here as the ratio of long to short term, and the long-term portfolio is consistent across these scenarios. That 62% long-term ties back to what was filed with the CPUC. So in our 46 MMT filing at the commission, that's about the portion of our load that was covered by long-term resources. So we wanted to be kind of consistent with what we showed the commission that we were planning on investing in, and in this analysis. And then that long-term portfolio translates into around 70% of our resource adequacy needs. So there's, the majority is coming from that, but there will be some additional RA purchases necessary. Next slide, please. So these are the estimated total costs of the portfolios, and all of those scenarios are shown on here. So because they all share those same costs of the long-term portfolio, resource adequacy, and so on. The warmer colors on the top of the bars are where you see the incremental costs to achieve each progressive emissions target. So you can see that those don't really become that significant until the latter half of the decade. But it does become a growing portion of costs, although still a relatively small compared to the overall portfolio costs. And I think we'll touch on this in the next slide, but while those numbers look small, I think it's also important to keep in mind the opportunity costs of pursuing these different pathways for emissions reductions versus any number of other programmatic or community goals that EBCE would have. Next slide, please. So staff isn't recommending a specific target. We just, wanted to present the results and these are just some thoughts in terms of framing the consideration of a 2030 goal. So like I mentioned, the long-term portfolio is the same, and the short-term transactions that fill that remaining balance are really what distinguish each scenario in terms of the emissions reductions. And I mentioned the trade-offs between achieving a higher percentage clean and potentially, pursuing other environmental, programmatic, or community goals. It's a little bit difficult to, really identify what those trade-offs will look like when we're kind of talking about something so far in the future. So because of that, we think that it's important to revisit this goal and maintain some of that optionality to protect against risks and to ensure that the whatever goal that we adopt is still in the customer's best interest based on any kind of shifting market dynamics or other potential variables. And then the last thing I want to call out is that this was presented to both the executive committee and the CAC and both did vote to support the net 0 million metric ton target. So that's scenario 4. Although, as I'm sure Mary will discuss, the CAC had some additional recommendations in terms of additional annual review and keeping track of those trade-offs. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the analysis or the 2030 goal.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Appreciate the presentation and all your tremendous work and with your team getting this to us. I see hands in the queue. Councilmember Mendel.
Thank you, Chair. Will you accept a motion at this time, or would you like me to hold it until after public comment? I can't hear you, Dan.
My apologies. Even though we won't be voting on a motion until after public comment and discussion, you are absolutely in order to make a motion now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So to me, there's really only one choice here, and I'm really pleased, sort of appropriate that I stuck around long enough to get to vote on this because I have been pushing for it for a long time, along with Jesse and Nick and others. I really feel like we have to set the goal of 100% greenhouse gas free by 2030. That has to be the goal, in my opinion. I hope that's something that unites us all as the place we want to be. And I think it's important to note that that becomes the default path, right? That it can, if something change, if something happens in 2028 or 2029 and the costs are just looking too astronomical, then the board at that time can take action to make a different choice. We're not eliminating that option, but they would have to take action to change course. And I think it's important that we set the course tonight to 100% greenhouse gas free. And so I will move the item with option 4, the 100% greenhouse gas free, or the 100% clean option as the preferred option.
I second.
Okay, that's
Thank you, Mary.
That's a motion by Councilmember Mendel, and a second. Was that Jesse?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, second by Mayor Aguin. And now we have some hands in the queue here, as well as some public comments. I see Mary Sutter.
Sure. I wanted to give you guys some feedback from the CAC. In the annotated minutes that you get, there is a boxed sentence or two, and the CAC actually spends a fair amount of time wordsmithing exactly what we want to say. And we have our motions, and this is what we support. The CAC supports and recommends option 4, backup being option 3. With EBC reporting back to the CAC and the board annually. Additionally, the CAC recommends that the plan to get to option 4 include a public engagement process. So that's kind of our official recommendation, but I wanted to add a little bit of color to that because we had a fair amount of back and forth in terms of with what we heard from the public and other CAC members. And part of that is this consistent coming back to the goals and being able to talk as a public agency and with the public around trade-offs that might be coming up as time goes on and you move towards that 0% goal. Really concerned that that goal can be balanced against some of the other things that EBC is attempting to do, really thinking about the just transition aspect with the workforce, equity, other aspects that EBC is trying to do. So really, the folks at the CAC wanted to make sure that this choice didn't short circuit some of those efforts, really to develop local renewables and kind of behind the meter strategies, other aspects around energy efficiency, demand response. But we did, as a CAC, support option 4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I'm not seeing any other members in the queue, board members right now. We do have some public commenters, so let's go to that. Let's go to that right now, Madam Clerk.
I have Blair Beekman and Al Weinrub. Al Weinrub, your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, thanks everybody. Haven't been here in a while. Nice to see you all again. I'm from the Local Clean Energy Alliance, for those who may have forgotten. Just one thing really stood out strongly to me, and I think this is in line with what Mary Sutter just mentioned, is that if you look at the behind the meter component of the energy mix, it starts out small, it stays small, continues small, goes on for small, and it ends up small. In other words, most of the local development work that our community needs, most of the development that our community needs to get economic development and jobs and resilience and all the things that's important to our community that were embedded in the local development business plan, those are all, a good chunk of them are behind the meter. I mean, most of them are probably behind the meter. So I just wanted to ask a question about, the goal is fine, but it's how you get to that goal. And the way it looks from this presentation is that this is all remote energy and storage, large scale. There is nothing here to indicate any local development plan whatsoever. So I wonder if there could be some commentary about this.
Yes.
Thank you, Al. Let's get the other speakers first, then we could ask staff to respond.
Thank you. I'd like to also call Stephen Lassiter. Blair Beekman, your microphone is unmuted.
All right, thank you. Really nice words from the previous speaker. Thank you. Thank you now for your patience with myself as an everyday community person trying to understand and work through these issues. Item 19, page 14 of your October 2020 Board of Directors memo of integrated resource planning results. This item basically has offered quite a substantial drop in solar storage and renewable energy ideas in 2023, while at the same time, there is a rise in dirty energy and its fuel. To myself, this suggests a way to prepare for a natural disaster catastrophe like a large earthquake and the emergency needs of diesel fuel and other fossil fuels and dirty energy for immediate emergency backup generator purposes. I hope we can work in simple, open, healing terms over the next few months to explain what these increases and decreases in 2023 can be about in the IPR report of October. I would like to work happening in the future, in the near future, at the same time working with the insistence that solar energy and storage can still be considered foremost and can still work to accomplish the goals of sustainability in the before and after of what may or may not be an upcoming catastrophic earthquake event in the SF Bay Area. If an earthquake is a-coming, we shouldn't just give up or lose focus on good renewable ideas. Sorry to unload all of this on you at this time. I hope we can work in good healing terms and conversations and questions in the next few months about these sort of issues. And if nothing else from this situation, maybe we can learn how to simply have simple, open, good dialogue to remind ourselves in the importance of planning for natural disasters in the future of local government community energy plans and projects. I don't want to hurt anything or create alarm when not actual or inappropriate. I hope we can consider this situation openly and together in the next few months. And great, I have a minute left to talk about this. Thank you. What the previous speaker just talked about, is what are we talking about for the next 5 years instead of the next 10 years? Are we going to be able to talk about, local jobs and I guess maybe the term is local procurement of energy, the just transition of ideas? Can that be important goals that we set for ourselves at this time? And with the 10-year goal to really leave nuclear, really take the steps in the next 10 years. And I think that's the kind of things that we're going to need to be asked ourselves about. And it sounds like Plan 3 has some importance that I hope we can all respect and in the coming months, how that can develop. With 13 seconds left, San Jose is working on ideas of a hydrogen fuel that I think is preparing for emergency backup generator use that should be questioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next speaker, please.
Stephen Lassiter, your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. My name is Stephen Lassiter. I'm a senior manager with Sunrun. And as folks may know, Sunrun is a leading installer of behind-the-meter solar and storage, which is also, of course, known as local clean energy resources. Many of our employees are your constituents in East Bay communities. Of course, our headquarters is in San Francisco. And actually, our chief policy officer is a resident of Oakland. And of course, we are a proud partner of EBCE. As you all may know, Sunrun's mission is to create a planet run by the sun. And we seek to do that primarily by installing local solar and this storage that can be used to benefit all ratepayers, including those who don't have solar or storage themselves. On a personal note, I recently became a resident of California, previously having worked in New York State at NYSERDA, the state energy agency there. And the message I just wanted to share with everyone is that folks in New York and across the country have their eyes on you. And not just EBCE, but other CCAs in Northern California. You probably talked to your sister CCA in Westchester County, New York. And I just want to let you know that a lot of folks are following your leadership and that your leadership really matters on issues like the one before us tonight. So appreciate your consideration of it. Sunrun is strongly in support of 100% clean energy goal by 2030. And frankly, you are setting the example that must be followed if we follow the scientists' advice. Lastly, thank you for your public service. I don't think people are aware that folks like yourselves, public servants like yourselves, do this work so late into the evening. And I will give back my final minute with respect to that, but really do appreciate all of your time and attention to this issue.
Thank you very much. And next speaker, please.
Eric Brooks, your microphone is available.
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Hello again, board members. Eric Brooks, Californians for Energy Choice. Just want to lend some more support and broaden on what Al Weinrib said earlier in his comments. It is absolutely vital to get localized and behind the meter resources built quickly for so many reasons, including local development and jobs, but also I want to amplify that there are other key reasons. One is wildfire and the other is resource reliability from PG&E blackouts because of wildfires and other factors. The more we build behind the meter resources and local resources and microgrids, the less we have to use long-range transmission lines that are high voltage, dangerous, and cause wildfires that are causing us so much trouble. And in turn, whenever there's a PG&E shutoff, we're less vulnerable to them because every single home and business, ideally, has got their own setup and their own backup, or at least has a microgrid in their neighborhood to support them. So as these IRPs go forward, it's important that they get more granular with more and more specificity about how we're going to build those local behind the meter resources for all the reasons that Al and his organization has spoken to many times in the past, but also for those reasons of making sure that we are becoming more fire resistant as a region and more resistant from the PG&E power shutoffs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, is that all the public speakers as far as you can tell?
Yes, that concludes all the speakers to this item.
Okay, and let's see, Councilmember Ed Hernandez.
Thank you. I just have a clarifying question, if I may, in regards to the net present value of taking that 100% clean energy zero. It says about $220 million through 21 and 30, but we're paying $85 million in the screen in 2030. Can you clarify the net present value so I can understand that $220 million that's mentioned in the fiscal impacts? I'm supportive. I just want to understand this information. maybe to staff or Stephanie.
Oh, so that's the NPV that's in the memo.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's looking across the horizon. So that's the net present value of the increase in costs over the 10-year period.
So what's the $85 million in 2030 then?
That's the annual increase in costs in 2030.
So we're looking at the next 10 years, 885 million per year. So we're looking at $850 million.
No, if you look at if we can pull up the cost graph, then it might be a little bit easier. That 85 million is the in 2030, the red bar, the red piece of the 2030 cost bar, whereas that the 220 is the net present value across the whole 10 years of each of those red bars.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so we have $85 million additional incremental as mentioned in the red in 2030. So it's not as much in 29 and smaller amounts in those years when it's red. And you take all those dollars, net present value, $220 million. Is that correct? Okay, cool. Just for me, the highlight would have been just to call out the little numbers. You separate it out, you can see the dollar amounts. It's hard to sort of see those lines, how much millions after a while. It just adds up. But I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's see, Councilmember McQuaid from Albany.
Thank you. As I look at the resolution that I see online, I never like to approve something with too many X's in it. So could you please clarify the board hereby approves clean energy goal of what's the percentage by 2030? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this.
Because it's a condition, it's, it's based on the direction that the board provides. Is it 80%? Is it 100%? We did not we did not fill it in yet because we did not want to presume that we knew the answer that the board would give us.
The motion is for the 100%.
Okay. I just want to make sure I totally understood.
Yeah. So it would be 100% if the motion is passed. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions to staff. One, I'll ask my questions, but when you answer the questions, Nick, I'd also, if you wouldn't mind, respond to the best you can of what Mr. Weinreb said in his public comment, if you could, about the local development and what the plan is. One question is, and maybe I missed it in the presentation, but I don't see an indication as to the percentage of eligible renewables in the different scenarios by 2030. Do we have an answer to that, or do we have a sense of that?
Yeah, so it pretty much tracks with carbon free. The accounting for renewables is a little bit different than carbon free. So, renewables is based on the generation from the RPS eligible projects in our portfolio, and then over our load, whereas carbon free includes hydro, but you also, we're not counting periods of where there would be over generation or potential curtailment or exports. So the numbers just don't line up exactly, but more or less they track with the carbon-free percentage in scenario 4 because of that RPS accounting where it's total generation overload. It's actually a little bit more than 100%.
And Dan, I think the further sort of point to sort of recognize, I think from our perspective, is we use clean energy and not say eligible renewables, because the term eligible renewables may change over time. Whereas clean energy is a broad framing that sort of links it to the greenhouse gas emissions, as opposed to, is this a PCC 1, or what the market is going to change over the next 10 years. And so we want it to be broad.
I understand. I mean, the RPS law, which ramps up through 2030, at least, it's still a distinct percentage that every ESP would be expected to have. And I'm just wondering if our commitment is going to continue to be, for example, always 5% more as a minimum above what the required commitment is to PG&E.
So
And that's just an example.
yeah, this setting this would not change the 5% more renewable than PG&E. So 2030, the RPS is 60%. So presumably the floor under our current, if you approve this, the floor would be 65% renewable. But practically speaking, it's going to be much closer to 100%, given that that's the resource that's going to be available.
Right. Large hydro is what it is. It's not going to get a lot more. Right. I understand.
And I'll just say that in the modeling that we did, for the long-term portfolio that was selected, just that alone it exceeds the RPS targets and the long-term RPS targets, obviously, in 2030 and in almost every year of the planning horizon. So, that's just the long-term portfolio. And then, the short-term transactions would be on top of that.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have I mean, at this point, 10 years from now, it would be hard to say, how much the ratepayers would pay more for the scenario 4 versus scenario 2, right? I mean, we can't really know that now, or does the numbers you have here essentially tell us that?
This is a reflection of a point in time, a modeling point in time.
Yeah.
So what I will tell you is that what we present here is wrong. What I also would expect is directionally, it's probably fairly, representative of the fact that it will be more, scenario 2 will be less expensive than scenario 4. How much less expensive? It's really hard to say, because we may find ourselves in a place where natural gas prices are actually very high in 10 years because of carbon tax, but also availability. If you see significant reductions in investment in natural gas, you're actually going to have less supply and renewable. So it's a bit like putting your finger up in the wind and saying, I think this is about right.
I understand. Okay, and then partly related to Al's question, and maybe if you could answer his question the best you can. I guess part of what he said made me think is, how is behind the meter solar, which we want more of if people can do this, how does more behind the meter solar, how is that reflected or shown in our portfolio and what we have on paper, what we will have on paper? I mean, because that's behind the meter. How is that incorporated?
Today, behind the meter solar shows up as a modifier of our load. So, I think that these values don't actually reflect the fact that we already have, I think in our case, 50, 60 megawatts. Maybe I think more. I think it's actually more. I think it's closer to 200 megawatts of rooftop solar in Alameda County. Stephanie, please.
Yeah, so I can just say from a assumptions perspective for this analysis, we did include targets for our from the local development team in terms of both expected growth in behind the meter solar, energy efficiency reductions, as well as, so those would act to decrease our forecasted load. And then on, what's driving some of the increase in our load growth would be electrification targets for both transportation and buildings. So the assumptions about the rooftop solar in our territory increase about, I think, tenfold over the modeling horizon, and that's accounted for in the load forecast, as Nick mentioned. The behind the meter slice that you see in the total portfolio cost charts, that's actually showing, so in the modeling, we had a resource, a behind the meter resource that was a candidate for the portfolio optimization. So alongside in front of the meter counterparts for solar paired with storage and other technologies. The model could select behind the meter solar plus storage, and it did choose to select that, essentially based on the assumptions that we included for cost. So that's not that slice by no means represents the total amount of behind the meter resources that we're projecting. That's just what was selected in the long-term portfolio optimization.
Right. So, I think it's a modeling heuristic more than it is a reflection of that we're not doing any solar. I mean, but I do want to be forthright here that our view is, by and large, the majority of our portfolio is going to be supplied by large scale resources. And that's among other things driven by project economics. I do expect that does not conflict though with very, very significant local development investment. If you go back to the local development business plan and the modeling that it did around jobs creation, one of the main findings was the jobs and economic benefits in Alameda County are predominantly going to come from energy efficiency, transportation electrification, and building electrification. Those are the three areas that are going to create the most jobs, reduce the most local pollution, and save consumers the most money. And those are absolutely embedded in a pathway to 80% or a pathway to 100%.
Okay, so I think you tried to answer Al's question. Yes, even though, like you said, a majority of our resources now, or 10 years from now, are going to be from larger renewables projects and storage, that there's still maybe there's still a lack of clarity, and maybe because we don't know, that's still a broad range left to figure out how much falls in the category of this, what someone might consider somewhat smaller scale local, quote unquote, local development. And I realize we can't know what we're going to be able to do 8 years from now, but there's just some understandable desire and interest to make sure we should have that commitment over time, even taking into account what you said about the other job creation. Does that make sense, Nick?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And any other questions? I think this is an action item. We have a motion and a second already on the table. And I see no more hands. So, Madam Clerk, can we call the roll?
Albany? Okay, I think we're having difficulties in meeting.
Albany?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you remove the screen share?
Dublin?
Yes.
Fremont?
Yes.
Hayward?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hayward's yes.
Yes.
Livermore? Newark?
Yes.
Pleasanton?
Yes.
San Leandro?
Heck yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Alameda County?
Yes.
Emeryville?
Yes.
Oakland?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Great job. We're going to push the envelope.
Did you say Union City?
I'm sorry?
Union
Did you say
City?
Union City?
Union City. I did not. Union City?
Yes.
Thank you. Now motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, Mr. Okay, excellent. We're setting the bar high, and that's a good thing. So thank you all for that. And we're moving on to the next agenda item, item 13. Now more of a short-term question we have, action item 2021, carbon-free allocation. Nick, is Jim giving the presentation on this?
Indeed, I am, but you can lay it out. All right, let's get into it. So hello, good evening, everybody, board. Nice to see everyone again tonight. So again, we're going to talk about the 2021 carbon-free allocation. This is an action item, and it's kind of a two-parter where the first part is the large hydroelectric allocation. The second part is the nuclear component. And that will come out through the presentation as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So first, some background on the carbon-free allocation. This comes from PG&E. EVCE, as an eligible LLC, can purchase carbon-free energy from PG&E. This is through the PCIA process, and it's for a one-year term. So each allocation is for a single year delivery. Through this process, the energy can be either from the pool of resources that includes the large hydroelectric generation resources, or from the other pool, which is the nuclear facilities, the nuclear generation resources. So for the current year, for 2020, the EVCE board directed staff to only accept the large hydroelectric energy. And this was purchased from PG&E for $0 and is currently delivering during the current year. And through the allocation process, the selection of the generation type, either the large hydroelectric and or the nuclear, occurs annually. And then again, this item is directly related to that for 2021. And next slide. So speaking specifically for the 2021 carbon-free allocation, here are the asks. And so it's kind of a two-parter. The first is that EVC is asking the board to approve and accept the large hydroelectric generation from the carbon-free allocation for delivery during 2021. That's part one. And then the second is in regards to the nuclear component of the allocation. And so staff is presenting a method to monetize the nuclear generation, and it's seeking board approval of one of two items. And so the first is to reject the allocation outright, not accept any allocation from the nuclear resources, or to accept the nuclear allocation and to resell the content to a third party. And proceeds from this resale would be budgeted towards local development programs as well. And next slide, please. So now I'm going to speak specifically about the component of the nuclear energy cell and kind of what the mechanics of it are. And again, so we talk about the large hydroelectric, but now we're talking specifically about the nuclear component of the allocation. And so with board approval, EVCE would be able to accept the nuclear energy for delivery next year in 2021. We'd enter into an agreement to sell the energy and attribute to a third party. And so the arrangement would be structured where we would sell the energy to the supplier. I'm sorry, let me go back. So we would accept the energy from PG&E through the purchase, through the carbon-free allocation, and then we'd sell it to the entity for $0. And in this sell arrangement, that entity would take title to all of the energy from the allocation. So we would take it from PG&E and sell it for $0, and they would have control and title to all of the nuclear energy, every megawatt hour of it. That marketer would then work to resell the energy to someone else, to a third party. And through that resale, EVC would receive half of the revenue from those sales. Any amount of energy that the energy supplier cannot resell, they would retain as their own, claiming title to that energy, with EVC not having any component of that. And so the energy would transfer to the third party, and then EVC would not have any reporting obligation for the nuclear energy from the allocation on our power content label. Next slide, please. So that's kind of the mechanics of how the resale of the nuclear energy works. Now I'm going to speak to some of the potential revenue from the arrangement. And so as mentioned, EVCE would receive 50% of the net profits, which we estimate to be somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. But obviously these numbers have a lot of variation depending on the resale value. And speaking to our retailer, there's indication that there is a market for this. So we think that there is the ability to sell this product that they would sell. And then the proceeds from any kind of sale would be earmarked through our budget towards local development or towards our other community serving elements like increased renewable procurement or to the operating budget. So what we see here on the bottom corner is kind of a breakdown of potential sold volumes and a range of pricing to kind of illustrate a range of potential EVCE profit. The third column to the right would be, includes that this is EVCE share, so it would be 50% of the net profits. And so we see at the really high level about 2 million. And then as we get down to lower volumes into kind of the $300,000, $500,000 range. And again, this is just kind of illustrate the point that the resale price has variability, but also the amount of energy that would be sold through this arrangement also has variability. And keeping in mind that any unsold energy would still remain with the selling entity, if that makes sense. So EBCE would not have any obligation to report this content themselves. Next slide, please. So now the power content, which again has numerous components to it. So through the power source disclosure regulations, these allow California reporting entities to disclose only that generation that matches their retail sales. So that means that if you have more generation than sales, you only have to report those that match your sales. Because of that, PG&E has more generation than sales, so they don't have the obligation to disclose the natural gas that's in their portfolio because they have sufficient carbon-free generation to match the retail sales in their portfolio, and so they can declare a carbon-free portfolio even though they do have natural gas content. And here's just some kind of illustrations around that point. Sometimes it's not clear to explain, but that's how the mechanics of the power source disclosure report work. And so on PG&E's 2019 PSDR, there were 13 terawatt hours of natural gas generation that was not disclosed on their PCL. This is due to the surplus of generation that they had over their retail sales. So they were able to report all their carbon-free generation, did not have to report their natural gas content through that. So with EBCE and with board acceptance choosing to accept the nuclear energy, this would lower the amount of carbon-free content on PG&E's PCL, and therefore more of the natural gas within their portfolio would be disclosed through their PCL. And so based on the 2019 PSDR that we've looked at, this can be as high as 2%. And so if we had accepted the allocation 2019, not that it existed then, there would have been 2% more natural gas shown on PG&E's power content label than was. I'm going to kind of wrap things up here. So, we're asking for two things here. One is to have the board vote to accept the large hydroelectric generation as part of the carbon-free allocation. And then second, for the nuclear is to either reject the allocation entirely or to accept it with the intent for a reselling entity to sell it and EBC to receive profits from that. Next slide, please. So then, of course, I want to open up for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. And first, do we have any initial questions? We discussed some of this in the last meeting, but any questions from board members before we go to our public commenters? I'm not seeing any hands raised right now, so let's go to public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the board after that. Madam Clerk.
Chair, I have 14 members of the public for this item.
Okay, let's do no more than 2 minutes each.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can I ask a quick, or Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
And I'm almost embarrassed to answer. I'm just trying to decipher this thing. In the staff report, it says the share of revenue could range from 500,000 to $1 million. Is this really what we're talking about total? Or is this annually or what? What is this?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So, we're only talking for the deliveries during the 2021 year. And so the allocation is decided annually. So it would be for that year. But, there's a lot of variability in that range because it depends on what quantity is resold and then what that resale price is. And so that's why it's a very wide range. And I don't think we know with certainty what the resale price would be and what the full amount of generation that could be sold would be, but it would only be for 2021.
Thank you.
I think the other just benefit that is more certain and Jim presented is the fact that PG&E has been able to mask the true nature of its resource portfolio because they have more generation than they have load. And if we take some of that generation out, it'll more clearly reflect the energy mix that they are supplying their customers with. And so given that that is a point of comparison between EBC and PG&E, that does provide a tangible benefit without actually increasing or changing the amount of brown power PG&E actually buys.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, we'll go to the public speakers.
Sure, I'll call them in groups. Natalia Valderas, Igor Trega, Jill Zamek, Linda Seeley, Jane Swanson, and Shiva Patel. Natalia, your microphone is unmuted.
Hello, I'm Natalia Balderas, a senior at Skyline High School and the Rose Foundation's New Voices Are Rising Climate Resilience Fellow for this year. I first just want to start by thanking you all for declining PG&E's offer to use nuclear energy in our community. By doing that, you just truly showed that you care about us and our well-being. But it feels like a stab in the back now that you want to start selling it. Any business with nuclear does not represent environmental justice. With this, you make us feel like our health and well-being and that of others in the earth is nothing but a mere price tag to you. You have this ever so striking opportunity to sell something that injures and kills thousands of people and permanently damages our earth's beautiful grounds. One shake, one blow, one drop of water has a chance to destroy absolutely everything when you have nuclear energy up and running. And you think that, well, we won't be using it, so let's give it to others is perfectly okay. What you're doing is enabling other communities to absolutely destroy themselves. Is that what you want to represent? Is that how you want to impact the kids that look up to you, the teenagers like myself who want to see what the future has in store? The community made a choice months ago, and here we are today. We don't want nuclear in our communities, and you heard us. So be kind to others as you clearly would your own, and don't sell nuclear to other communities. Go ahead and disappoint all the adults, but don't disappoint the younger generations who feel like you already don't hear us. We want to live, but we also want our neighbors, our earth, and everything in it to live as well. Nuclear energy has no place in a Green New Deal or the clean energy future we demand. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Igor, your microphone is unmuted.
Yes, hi, Chair Kelp and members of the board. I'm Igor Tregup with the Sierra Club SF Bay chapter. And the previous speaker stated very eloquently everything that I was going to say. So shout out to our youth. I mean, we pay the bills, and you've heard from your constituents multiple times, once in April and again in November. We do not want nuclear in any shape or form in our public agency. We want to thank you for listening to us twice. And we don't understand why this item continues to come up over and over. I think the resource that staff resources, board resources, and community resources that this item has taken has kept us away from being able to do some good work on fighting important issues and moving towards an 100% renewable portfolio. The Sierra Club remains unequivocally opposed to nuclear energy. Although nuclear plants have been in operation for less than 60 years, we feel strongly that as they come offline, they should be replaced with truly renewable, not just carbon-free energy. And that barring exceptional circumstances, power plants should be dismantled and the sites restored 30 to 50 years after the plant has ceased operating. Diablo Canyon Unit 1 has been offline since Labor Day because of issues with the boiler. It was reported that this failed part cost over $100 million to ratepayers to repair due to a developed hydrogen leak. So I urge you to put out a policy against the acceptance of nuclear energy allocation for resale or use in the program's energy portfolio. Let's work together to find other pathways to meet our GHG reduction goals. We understand the financial and economic constraints the board is facing, but taking this slight financial gain does not fit in with the program's core values. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next speaker, please.
Jill Zamek, your microphone is available.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
I'm Jill Zamek. I live in San Luis Obispo County. I'm pleased to say that the CCA in my region, Central Coast Community Energy, abandoned its consideration of the purchase of nuclear energy earlier this year. along with the vast majority of the other CCAs. I spoke at your November 18th meeting, and I speak again in opposition to any CCA having any association with dirty and dangerous nuclear energy. I understand that one option under consideration tonight is receiving and then reselling Diablo Canyon's nuclear energy. Who do you think might purchase it? And as stated in your agenda packet materials, quote, if the energy supplier is not able to resell the product, they would retain the energy, end quote. A further shell game plan is that, quote, all the nuclear energy would transfer to the marketer and EBCE would not have any reporting obligation for the energy of the power content label, end quote. Regardless of the monetary benefit EBCE believes it will gain through this scheme, it is not worth this betrayal to its core values to provide clean, renewable energy to its customers. It's not worth the damage to your reputation. And are you aware of the continuing reliability issue at Diablo Canyon? Unit 2 is currently offline due to recurrent hydrogen leaks involving the new $90.3 million stator. It was shut down from July 17th until August 1st, then October 22nd until November 28th. It was online for a couple of days and then shut down again. It isn't expected to go back online until sometime in January. Again, I reiterate, nuclear energy is neither clean nor renewable, and it has no place in the power mix of any community choice aggregation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Linda Seeley, your microphone is unmuted. Linda Seeley, your microphone is unmuted.
Oh, sorry. I'm Linda Seeley. I'm currently for a while living in Oakland, and so I'm very interested in East Bay Community Energy. I'm actually from San Luis Obispo, where our community choice, our CCA rejected outright the nuclear attributes. Tonight, listening to your plan, I am rather shocked that you would actually, it's like a shell game, the way I hear it, that you can accept the nuclear attributes, pawn them off on someone else, and then not have to report it in your report to your constituency, because you know that the people who are members of your community choice program don't want nuclear energy to be in the mix. I know that you know that nuclear energy is not carbon free, number one. The carbon costs of mining, milling, processing, and then at the end of the plant of decommissioning, the carbon price of decommissioning a nuclear plant is just phenomenal. And so for a price of $500,000 to $1 million in a year, to sell your soul and not tell your customers about it, seems to me to be a choice that you would not want to make. So I urge you to reject this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Jane Swanson, and immediately after she stops, Shiva Patel may go. Microphones are unmuted. Jane Swanson.
There we go. Now you can hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Jane Swanson. I'm a resident of San Luis Obispo and an active member of San Luis Obispo Mothers for Peace. Although I'm not a customer of East Bay Community Energy, the actions of each CCA kind of reflect on CCAs in general, and that's why I feel compelled to speak tonight. I would like to begin by applauding the previous speakers. Each spoke with his or her own voice quite eloquently, and I applaud everything they said. of course, I want East Bay to reject PG&E's offer to accept nuclear power, even with the intention of selling it to a third party, would be to deceive East Bay's customers. I also question a statement in the PowerPoint that there are indications that there is a market for this product. That was not backed up in the slides. So I'd like to know where the heck that came from, because the cost of nuclear energy is much, much higher than that produced by truly sustainable energy sources. So I question that statement and would like to know where that came from. Yes, labeling nuclear power as carbon-free is very deceptive, and I won't repeat the reasons for that, as other speakers said that. And of course, nuclear is not renewable, given that the fuel depends on mining of uranium, which is a finite resource, most of it not being in the United States. So I request that you honor your commitment to the community, and I quote from your website, East Bay Community Energy exists to provide more renewable energy at competitive rates to our customers. Nuclear is not renewable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shiva Patel.
Hi, everyone. This is Shiva Patel. I'm an Oakland resident. I'm a former steering committee member of East Bay Community Energy, the initial steering committee representing a community seat. Currently also an MBA student at UC Berkeley. I want to echo some of the points being raised by a variety and a lot of your constituents, and that being a couple things. One, I'm very concerned that this offering is not very transparent, and I'm wondering why so much time and energy has been spent. It makes me question or wonder why $300,000 to $1 million, which is a projected savings from this, is so valuable for time, staff, and community energy, and is really the budget in that dire needs for us to be getting this. And the lack of transparency around that and alternative options has been a little concerning. I also think that, we've spent multiple board meetings and community conversations on this topic. And again, it's incredible how much public staff time and energy is being spent. And I'm wondering what else could we be doing? And many other speakers have mentioned. And so if there are serious budget concerns and we need this money, maybe we can be spending that time on different solutions. And so with that, I want to echo the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, what they've been bringing up, and also recognize that there are a lot of your constituents who are saying very similar things. And I'm not hearing a balanced argument. And I'm also not hearing a very transparent process from staff and board members. And so please consider this and please address this before you make your comments. I appreciate your time tonight. As always, appreciate the effort at EBCE.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next group will be Benjamin Zank, Jada Dumas-Dogan, Barbara Stebbins.
Apparently he told my dad,
Jessica Thovad, and Al Weinrub. Jessica, your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you, Jessica Thovad, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. First and foremost, we want to say we're very concerned, and I would say even embarrassed to see that we're talking about a resale of nuclear energy that could potentially be worth about $350,000 to maybe $1 million, juxtaposed to the $82 million that East Bay Community Energy made last year. This is not money that we need desperately. As a matter of fact, I feel like it's a huge waste of time and energy. And we've been talking about nuclear energy for the last 14 months. I think you've spent that money already. The other thing I wanted just to reiterate is that it's not East Bay Community Energy's job or mission to be a third-party wholesale energy broker. And so we really need you to recalibrate back to the focus of East Bay Community Energy. And I think the other thing I want to reiterate is that California has been moving away from nuclear energy for a reason, because of all the risks and because because of the dangers and the fact that these plants are very old. It was mentioned about the continual hydrogen leaks and problems with the boilers at Diablo Canyon. And similarly, San Onofre was abruptly shut down because of leaks as well. When you take an old car to the mechanic and the mechanic says, we could probably fix this, but we can't guarantee you that the car is going to keep going. We actually recommend that you buy a new car because it's a money pit. Well, that's the situation here with these nuclear power plants. The new car that we need to be buying is actual clean energy, actual renewable energy, local clean energy, and projects and programs that would create jobs and actualize a clean energy future. That's what we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to call the next set of speakers, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Alita Dupree, your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you, Board Chair Dan Kalb and members. Alita Dupree for the record. I speak to you as an ordinary user of electricity. My opinions are my own. There are probably some who will agree with my sentiments, and there were probably some who will disagree. I consider myself an independent voice. In an ideal world, we wouldn't be doing this at all. I do support the hydroelectric allocation acceptance. And as far as nuclear goes, my position is very nuanced. I would prefer that we didn't buy the nuclear, but I also recognize that you as a public agency have a fiduciary obligation to consider all options. And I appreciate you doing that, even if it is things that people don't like. And the fact is that we see power companies and other entities that trade in energy in their normal course of business. And that is not going away. I don't think that anybody is going out and saying, I'm going to buy some nuclear power like they would be buying ground meat from a supermarket. But there are entities out there at this time, for whatever reason, are buying basic unspecified power. I will respect your decision either way. And I will not hold either decision against you. And I will continue to engage with you respectfully going forward. And I will leave that to you. And I thank you for taking the time to consider these options. And I leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jada, your microphone is available.
Hi, Jada Durmaz Dogan with Local Clean Energy Alliance. Also, I'm a resident of Oakland. I would like to thank the board members again for rejecting nuclear back in April, and I urge the board to say no to nuclear one more time. EBC should not be involved in buying or selling this dirty nuclear energy. Actually, I would like to point out something in the staff report, and many other speakers mentioned that already. There's a sentence that says, quote, there are indications that there's market interest for this product, which continues to be explored by the marketer, unquote. However, Pioneer Community Energy's staff report from their August board meeting contradicts this sentence. In 2020, Pioneer Community Energy became one of the only 3 CCAs that accepted the nuclear allocation from PG&E. And according to their staff report from August 20, quote, staff continues to market the nuclear allocation, but interest remains extremely limited, unquote. So they're saying that there is limited interest for nuclear energy. Also at the EBC Executive Committee meeting last November, Nick Chesed said, you might have to pay someone to take the nuclear energy. You can listen to it if you want. The discussion starts at the 42nd minute and Nick Chesed makes this comment at the 46th minute. Many other speakers mentioned the transparency issue already, so I hope the board members will question this contradiction. I urge you to vote against this proposal to accept the PG&E nuclear allocation and resell it to a third party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Benjamin Zank. And for the speakers that are pending, I'm unmuting your microphones, but please wait until your name is called to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, just reiterating some of the previous comments. I feel like this idea of nuclear energy or being a power broker is something that we've addressed through the previous board meetings, and it's pretty frustrating to see it on the agenda again. I would love to see staff spending their time seeing how we can maybe close Diablo Canyon earlier, and maybe that will be a much larger reduction to the PCIA that customers now have to pay. So it would be great to see if there's a more effective use of staff time than bringing this up repeatedly. And I appreciate Supervisor Haggerty's question of what is really the amount we're talking about here. I also have just generally a question, maybe for staff or the board. Do we currently have any contracts with nuclear? Because on the EBCE power mix on the website, it states that 1% of the bright choice comes from nuclear. And my understanding was we don't have any nuclear in the mix other than what might be from unspecified sources of power. So I'd love some clarification on that as well. Thank you.
Al Weinrub and Cynthia Landry, your microphones are unmuted. Al Weinrub first, please. Second call for Al Weinrub. We'll move on to Cynthia Landry.
Okay, I got it. I'm sorry.
Yes,
I didn't
okay.
see my mute. So people made a number of really important points, and thank you. Thank you for that. I think one of the ways to think about this is to liken this to basically East Bay Community Energy buying cocaine from the PG&E cartel, turning around and selling it to a street dealer, and then thinking it's a good deal because, you know, essentially it gets it at no cost at EBCE, and all the profits come from the work of the street dealer. And that might be thought of as clever. It's certainly clever in the cocaine world. But I wanted to point out that being a middleman in that kind of an arrangement is not at risk. First of all, you are responsible and a party for all the effects of that cocaine and what it has on the community in terms of overdoses and, you know, the many impacts that make everybody pretty much against cocaine dealers. In this case, we have radioactive cocaine is what we got. So in addition to all the health impacts of regular cocaine, we have what are current and past and future health impacts of what nuclear energy is all about. You know, it stays in the environment for thousands of years. The other thing people have pointed out is that we have an obligation as a middleman to supply the product, and the supply is very unreliable, as people have pointed out. One of the things that's sort of questionable about the numbers here is that if this power were actually obtained for free, then the numbers are about 10 times too small from what it could be sold at. So there's a real big disconnect there. And also the notion that PG&E would have to substitute this amount of nuclear with brown power is not true. They have plenty of renewable energy excess that they can substitute, actually end up with a carbon-free product and a higher renewable content as well. And they'd be in a better position than they are now to compete with PG&E, to compete with East Bay Community Energy. So thank you very much.
Cynthia Landry, your microphone is unmuted.
Cynthia Landry for SEIU Local 1021. SEIU Local 1021, which is a public sector union that represents over 15,000 members in the East Bay. And also we have members in San Joaquin County, including the city of Tracy. We continue to adamantly oppose the inclusion of nuclear energy in the EBC energy portfolio, and now the monetization of nuclear energy through a third-party vendor for a possible profit of $500,000 to $1 million. The recent EBCE financials appear strong. In fact, so strong that you have created another reserve fund. And last year, you netted an additional 22 million of profits. This 500,000 to 1 million small profit, if any realized, would need to be balanced against tarnishing the EBCE brand, the confidence of the EBCE ratepayers in organizational transparency, and the community's vision and trust in our energy products. 62 community members and many others have spoke against nuclear energy, and we would hope that your board again reject the monetization of nuclear energy. We need renewable energy. That's our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call Blair Beekman, Eric Brooks, and R. Roscal, or R.C. Roscal, your microphone is unmuted.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Ruskell Kayangyong, speaking as a community member. I want to thank the previous speakers. Appreciate all the information they shared. We're in a climate emergency, and many of our cities throughout the Bay Area have declared climate emergency. We don't have enough time. We cannot go backwards. I urge EBCE to reject any proposal that's connected with nuclear. We just cannot afford to go backwards at this time, and look at upholding ways to get 100% safe, clean energy, and always stay away from anything dangerous. We need to demonstrate to our community that that we're here to solve the climate crisis. Thank you.
Hello, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for this item. I think to start, the idea of, we're in the midst of considering the ideas of representational democracy versus the ideas of a democracy of one person, one voice. I think these are ideas that can really develop well into the next decade. And these are the ideas of corporate democracy versus the democracy of the individual. And these are questions we're really trying to learn how to answer for ourselves at this time. And for local community energy, thank you for, these sort of issues and the IPR, we're at a time to really try to set out what we're going to be doing with ourselves for the next year. So you're not going to be fully hitting the mark, it seems like, but you're giving some parameters. And it's from those parameters that, I hope, our good community can see what you're doing and working towards, and we can really debate it. And in the next year, you can be open to that debate and really develop, we may have some serious natural disaster issues in the next 10 years with earthquakes, with wildfires. And it just seems like building a local community energy plan is a really important component to that. And I hope we work on the local ideas, and that can really help. And I'm worried that you're addressing these large distribution of energy issues, and that's a concern when we're trying to build real local ideas. And so thank you for what can be debate for the next year or two to really set a good course for ourselves. And I think we know what that course is, to slowly step away from large corporate nuclear practices. And so thank you, and good luck how we all can move and work together on this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi again. Good evening again, board members. Eric Brooks with Californians for Energy Choice. So many reasons have been put forward so eloquently that why this is a bad idea. Hopefully all of you saw the email that I sent yesterday, which is has a link to the best meta-analysis I've ever seen that shows that the carbon emissions through the entire life cycle process of nuclear energy are much higher than solar, wind, and efficiency and battery storage, things like that. It's just not valid to call nuclear energy carbon free. And if you want to compete with PG&E and have a better advertising portfolio than they have, that's what you want to do, is say, hey, shout to the rooftops, go out and get in public. PG&E is still selling you this toxic, evil energy, and it's not even carbon free as they claim. Talk about that to get a leg up on PG&E in the public discourse. Don't take their energy from them and sell it. I mean, the idea, as others have stated, of taking a toxic, evil product and selling it to others so that you've got some money to work on local things for your own community is just outrageous. I mean, I can't believe that's even being considered. And this was considered in San Francisco, where I live. And our San Francisco Public Utilities Commission not only unanimously rejected this idea of taking free nuclear power and selling it to other communities, but also passed a permanent ban on nuclear power of any kind from any source being in our community choice program. And moving forward, I would like to see East Bay Community Energy pass a similar item so that we don't have to come back once or twice a year and keep strongly opposing this bad idea. So please do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
There are no other speakers to this item.
Okay. All right, we'll bring it back to the board members. Mayor Martinez, Emeryville.
Thank you, Chair Kalb. I just want to thank all of the public speakers, and I agree with many of your points. I agree that nuclear shouldn't be a part of our power mix. I agree that it is not a carbon-free source of energy. I agree that there are many impacts from nuclear, but that I don't think is what we're debating tonight. I did vote against the allocation of nuclear being added to our power mix. But again, that's not what we're being asked to consider tonight. We're not being asked to add it to our portfolio. The reason why I think it's not a good thing to add to our portfolio is I don't think that there's room for nuance in the marketing of nuclear. And while I agree with the last speaker, Mr. Brooks, about nuclear being, not a great option, I don't think that there's room in the public sphere to have a nuanced conversation with folks who in my community are not that engaged on topics of our power content mix. So, there were a couple of points that I asked staff to clarify for me over these many months of us considering nuclear allocations. One, is this energy going to be produced no matter what? And the answer I received was yes, it's going to be served up on the grid. And as all of you know, we can't determine who's going to get exactly what electron when we're moving energy across the grid. The other case is that our ratepayers have already paid for or are currently paying for this energy through the PCIA. And the impacts of the nuclear that's being produced are going to happen no matter what. And while I would love to have Diablo Canyon closed today, tomorrow, or any increment of time earlier than the planned closures of 2024 and 2025, I honestly think that those are a pipe dream. I also wanted to say that I reject the implication that staff has not been transparent. We've been discussing this for a long time in many public meetings, and I haven't had any discussions with staff nor with any other board members that haven't been reflected in the conversations that we're having here in a public forum before all of you today. And I'm grateful that you're all able to join us and give public comment and have your voices heard. I reject the implication that we, if we were to accept this allotment and sell it, that we are drug dealers. Because as I said, this energy is going to be produced no matter what. That's my understanding. And it's going to be served up onto the grid no matter what. So what we're talking about is a numbers game. And I'll tell you why that's important to me. To me, this isn't a fiscal question. You guys are absolutely right. This is not a lot of money when it comes to our overall budget for procuring energy. The choice to me is between not accepting this allocation or accepting it, selling it, and pushing PG&E to report their actual effect on greenhouse gases through their entire procurement portfolio. And so it took Nick a few times to tell me this for me to really visualize it. And it's explained in very clearly in the staff report in words, but I'm a visual learner. So I prepared, I stole some of my kids' school materials earlier today, and I made a little presentation. And none of this is to scale. So, and staff, I hope you will correct me if I've misrepresented anything, but this is really to get across a broad point. So I just want to show this. You might, if you haven't pinned my video to see this better, you can do that. You go to the top right corner of my
you go to speaker view. If everybody goes to speaker view under view, you could see it larger.
There you go.
I'll just spotlight it.
So PG&E procures more energy than they serve in a given year. So let's say they procure a certain amount of what we're going to call dirty energy for simplicity's sake, and a certain amount of clean energy. So right now, because they have procured, partially because we're doing such a good job at CCAs at taking their customers, they certainly procure more than they are serving up. So right now, they're only required to report what they're serving, which disregards all of the dirty energy. However, if we are to take our allotment and sell it or do anything with it, which isn't affecting our content label, which is important to me, as I said, for marketing reasons. If we are to take that allotment, we start pushing them. So what really is changing is just this window. It's not changing what they've already procured, but we need to push them to start reporting on the dirty energy that they are procuring. So I have to give a note that I created this little presentation before I received the East Bay Clean Power Alliance's comment letter. And I want to just acknowledge that they have a paragraph, I think it's the third from the last, where they dispute that this is how it will go. That they have excess renewable energy that will actually fill this gap. So I wanted to turn it over to our CEO or anyone else on staff who would like to respond to East Bay Clean Power Alliance's assertion that they're not going to have to report on dirty energy if we take this allocation.
Yes.
Thank you. Nick, could you answer that before we go to the next speaker?
Yes. So that is accurate, Vice Chair Martinez, in that taking this allocation reduces their excess power, and the excess power that's being unreported is brown power. There's not an unreported renewable quantity. So if you went from 120 as your, or whatever the ratio is, to say, let's call it 120% to 95% because of the allocation, their renewables, the total renewables in their portfolio remains unchanged. And Jim, please interrupt me if I'm misstating something, if they're not reporting renewables, but that is certainly not our understanding, and what we found from our analysis.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered most of it. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's pretty simple. Kind of how I see it is that, the renewable portion is there, and then as they exceed their retail sales, there's certain elements of their portfolio they don't have to report. The first is obviously the natural gas and unspecified. The next tier is that they can also not report the non-renewable carbon-free, and then they can also not report their renewable, which they would do anyway. But the renewable content is unchanged. It's just they have less generation in total to report. And so the scale widens just like it did on your wonderful representation there. And then that natural gas would be evident.
And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make the additional point that I would hope other CCAs would follow our lead if we were to take action and go ahead and accept the allocation and sell it, which would further impact PG&E's reporting.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I see more people in the queue. Let's see, Mary Sutter and then Councilmember Hannon from Newark.
So as you can imagine, the CAC had a pretty spirited conversation about this as well. We ended up with a split vote, what I'm calling a split vote in terms of what our recommendation and our motion that we put together to provide you guys advice from the CAC. It was 3-2 to accept the large hydro allocation, which is one part of this, but to reject the nuclear allocation. So there are only 5 of us now, and it was a 3-2 vote. The 2 members really did not support the outright rejection of nuclear for various reasons, different reasons. Both the folks who voted no on the motion to reject, if that makes sense, really felt it was up to the board to make that decision and consider any potential money resource that could help the EVCE ratepayers. So that's it from the CAC.
Thank you. And Mike?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mayor Martinez, for your visual. That certainly makes the issue much easier for us to understand. And I agree with your position that I think we should accept and then resell the nuclear power. What I'd like to ask, though, is it possible that any net proceeds that we would receive from that we could utilize in providing additional grant funding to our nonprofits moving forward next year? Would that be something that we could earmark the money for, Nick?
I would say the use of these proceeds is, at the full discretion of the board, subject to basically input that we get from our general counsel.
And I would ask that if the board is agreeable at the end of the day to accept the nuclear power, and we do receive net proceeds from the sale of that, or from the sale of it, that those monies be earmarked for nonprofits in future grants. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Mayor Arreguín Berkeley.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that point, I actually have a different suggestion around how the proceeds can be spent. I think the money should either go into the local development budget or should go towards purchasing more renewable content. That way, there's kind of an offset. You're taking money from selling dirty energy to help increase the amount of clean energy and renewable content. I think that there's a nexus, and I think that would be a more appropriate use of the funds. I just will say that I initially, when I heard this proposal, not surprisingly, had concern because I was very strongly against accepting the nuclear allocation. My city is a nuclear-free community, but I have kept an open mind, and I think this is very different from accepting the nuclear power and then having it be within our portfolio. and having it be recorded on our power content label and being provided to customers throughout our service area. It would not be on our power content label. We would get proceeds, and it would reduce the PG&E's clean energy reporting on its power content label as well. So I actually think this is an interesting proposal that's been put forward to kind of undercut PG&E's manipulations. And there's no question that PG&E's motive in providing nuclear and hydro was not altruistic. Rather, I'm sure it was intended to undercut CCAs to put us in the same position. I think we would actually be reversing the situation by accepting this, immediately reselling it, and then reducing the amount of clean energy that PG&E can actually report. So I'm actually prepared to vote for this tonight, but with the proviso that the money would go towards either the local development budget or towards procuring more renewable energy for the agency. And we just adopted a 30%, 2030 goal of reaching 100% carbon free. In order for us to get there, we're going to have to progressively increase the amount of renewables. And I think this could be one way that we can start moving towards that particular path. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, who else? Councilmember McQuaid from Albany, and then back to Mary if you have something else to say.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I haven't been to all of your meetings, but we certainly discussed this in our city. And while I appreciate, Mayor Arreguín, what you're saying, to me, it feels really disingenuous for us to say that we don't want nuclear power, but we'll buy it and sell it to somebody else. And maybe that's a little too simplistic, but it just doesn't feel right to me. And I am at this point thinking I'm going to vote no on this one.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I see no other hands raised. Any more hands raised? I see Councilmember Monroe from Livermore.
Trying to unmute, sorry. Yeah, I wanted to really appreciate Vice Chair Martinez's presentation, Mayor Arreguín's statement. I'm wondering if it might be time to make a motion, and I'm prepared to make a motion basically restating what Mayor Arreguín said. So maybe he should make the motion if he's willing, and I would second.
I defer to you.
I don't think I can remember exactly the words. It was more or less accept the motion, but with the proviso that the monies that we save go towards building new clean energy or towards the, towards that offset that we're trying to get to in the future. That fairly accurately?
Yeah, towards the local, either the local development budget or towards purchasing renewable content.
Exactly, what he said. That I would like to so move.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion is a motion by Councilmember Monroe from Livermore and a second by Mayor Arreguín from City of Berkeley. And I'm seeing if there are any other hands raised. Does anybody else have any questions? If I understand, the motion is to effectively temporarily accept the nuclear allocation from PG&E, which is doesn't really cost us anything. They're giving it to us for their own purposes, not to help us, and then to sell it presumably to the highest bidder with the hopes that we could make as close to, hopefully close to $1 million that could offset, that essentially offsets our costs, and the having this additional money, whatever it happens to be specifically earmarked to be to be added to. I think that the implication is this is added to whatever else is going to exist or exists in our budget. This is on top of anything in there, not to supplant it. So it's just to add on top of it to be part of our local development business plan and or ensure or add to more renewables procurement. Is that a correct restating of the motion?
Can I also just add on? It's important that maybe the less discussed piece of this is to confirmed the acceptance of the large hydro allocation as well, which was part of the staff memo.
Yes, that could be part of the motion, or that could be a separate motion, either way.
Happy to make it part of the motion.
Okay,
Yes.
that's part of the seconder agrees to that? Okay,
Yes,
that's
Also, I wanted to correct you. I think what you meant to say is nefarious purposes with PG&E.
sounds good. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table, which does include the large hydro question, which we didn't really need to debate that, of course. I see no more hands raised, so I'm going to ask for the roll call vote, Madam Clerk, unless staff has any clarification or points to make. Seeing none. Okay, please call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Prior to that, I'd like to let Shiva Patel know we will not be calling on any more public speakers. You have spoken to this item. Thank you. Okay. Roll call now is Albany.
No.
Berkeley.
Yes.
Dublin.
Yes.
Fremont.
Yes.
Hayward.
No.
What was the last one?
I didn't hear Livermore, but I think it's my turn, so
Livermore,
yes.
yes. Thank you. Newark.
Yes.
Pleasanton.
Yes.
San Leandro.
Yes.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Alameda County.
Yes.
Emeryville.
Yes.
Oakland.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, that item has been disposed of, and we are going to agenda item 14. Okay, what is agenda item 14? Oops.
Yes. Agenda
Board
item,
member and staff announcements.
no, agenda item 14, Dan,
yes.
is the appointment of an to the executive committee.
Right, okay, so that's for me. Thank you. Sorry, my computer went out for a second. So yes, as we all know, we have a 5-member executive committee, and 3 of those members are no longer continuing past the beginning of the year. Scott Haggerty, Al Mendel are no longer going to be elected officials, and Jesse is continuing on doing a great job as mayor, but he will not be the appointee to this body. So that leaves 3 vacancies. Tonight, I'm putting forward 1 name to adopt tonight, and before or at the next board meeting, which is the 3rd Wednesday in January, we will seek to fill the other 2 slots. The name I'm putting forward tonight is Councilmember Dan Arreola from Tracy. I have talked with Dan, and he is more happily willing to serve on the executive committee. Both Diane and I have discussed this, as well as Nick's input, and we are enthusiastically inviting Dan, pending board approval, to be part of our executive committee effective, I guess, January 1st. So that I will ask for a motion, but prior to that, prior to the next board meeting, I'm happy to have conversations or seek information from any board member who is continuing on in 2021 on this board, if they are interested in this, or if they're recommending that somebody else, that I consider someone else to appoint. And then any suggestions I get will be, I'll be discussing those with Vice Chair Martinez and with our CEO, and we will bring 2 additional names forward, hopefully, at the January meeting. So, but today, I'm asking for a motion to add Dan Arreola to the executive committee effective January 1st.
This is Jaime Patino. I'd like to make the motion.
Thank you. And Scott Haggerty seconding it?
Yeah, I might as well get my last second in.
Okay. I see a hand raised by Al Mendel.
Yes, I was speaking with my successor, Elisa Marquez.
about this. And she mentioned a very strong desire to serve on the executive committee as well, and asked that I put her name forward tonight. So, I mean, I'd like to add that to the motion, but I don't want to run afoul of your process here too much. So,
I'm sorry, Al. Mr. Mindell, who did you want to add?
Councilmember Elisa Marquez, whom you all met last month.
Well, I'm happy to consider her. Again, anybody can make a motion and second it, regardless of what the chair suggests or asks. That's obviously Robert's rules. But I'm also happy to consider and chat with Councilmember Marquez, as well as Vice Chair Martinez may also want to do that prior to next January's meeting, when the other two slots will be up for discussion and vote. So,
Mr. Chair, can I add something?
Yes, sure.
I think we should afford you the opportunity as the chairman, because these are your appointments to the committees. And I think it would be best if we moved forward today with Dan, and then you can meet with the council member and anybody else and decide who you want to put on the committees, because that is your prerogative.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that as well. Just know that Councilmember Marquez has my strong recommendation, since I won't be here to say that next month. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Probably some people saw the agenda item and maybe thought we were going to make all the decisions today, and that's not the case. We're going to make one decision today and two more hopefully next month. So we do have a motion and a second. Do we have any public speakers on this item, Madam Clerk?
I do not have public speakers to this item.
Okay, any more comments by board members? Seeing none, so we could take the vote. I'm sorry, Dan, did you want to say any words?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I just want to say absolutely thank you for the consideration. As a new member to this organization, I really think it's been an incredible honor to have a voice at the table, and I'm looking forward to continuing that with this vote, hopefully. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Madam Clerk, we're thrilled to have Dan on board, and let's take the roll.
Sure. Albany?
Yes.
Berkeley?
Yes.
Dublin?
Yes.
Fremont?
Yes.
Hayward?
Yes.
Livermore?
Yes.
Newark?
Yes.
Pleasanton?
Yes.
San Leandro?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Union City?
Yes.
Alameda County?
Why, certainly.
Emeryville?
Yes.
Oakland?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Union City, I called you, right?
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Thrilled to have you on board, and Nick and the staff will share with you and send you the calendar announcements, and our clerk or our staff will make sure you get all the required notifications and Zoom links to the executive committee meetings. They have been generally, I believe, the fourth Friday at noon, more or less. And so we'll see if that continues. Obviously, right now, that's all by Zoom. And thrilled to have you on board the executive committee. Okay, and I believe we are now to our board member and staff announcements, which may include possible items to consider for next month's agenda. And anybody have their hand raised to consider any good of the group here? I see none. Okay, I will just make a very comprehensive happy holidays announcement to one and all. Thank you all for your great work as on this board. Thank you all for the good work you are doing in your respective cities. And please be safe. We still have an extremely serious pandemic out there. And as everybody knows, it's getting a little bit worse right now. And we have a lot of work to do. And so happy holidays. Please be safe. And this meeting is now adjourned. Oh, we don't need public comment on announcements, right? No, I don't think we do. Okay, therefore this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy night. Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas. Night. Night. Happy holidays.